Hey, before we get going today, I wanted to give you a heads up. Before you know it, Halloween's going to be here, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then New Year's. And then we're going to have to worry about, how do I pay for all this holiday spending? Let's go ahead and make a New Year's resolutions list. And let me go ahead and guess. Last year and every year before that, 2 of your resolutions were pay some debt off, save some money. I can help you do both of those. Check both of the boxes at savewithconrad.com. And how's this for starters? No house payments until next year. I mean, let's face it, your single biggest bill, that's your house payment. Well, if you got to pocket that cash for both November and December, wouldn't that make the holiday season just a whole heck of a lot easier? Of course it would. And let me also talk to you if you've got credit card debt. Man, you know you can do better than that. What is your rate on that credit card right now? 28%, 31%? You know those interest rates are too high, and you know you can do better. Not only that, did you know that the interest you pay on those credit cards is not only sky high, it's also not tax deductible, whereas the interest you pay on your mortgage is tax deductible. So if you could get a better rate, a greater tax deduction, skip your next 2 house payments, and come next year, a lower monthly payment, what are you waiting for? We're routinely helping our My World listeners save $500, $600, $700, even $800 a month. But how much can you save? It's free to find out right now at savewithconrad.com. And I want to give you a heads up. We're not a bank or a credit union. We're not going to say no and treat you like a number and show you the door. We're going to say not yet, but here's how. You need a plan. You need a friend in the mortgage business. And that's me. Let my family help your family at savewithconrad.com. It's no cost, no obligation. And if we can't save you some cash, we won't waste your time. Get a quick quote. You'll be glad you did. savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World with mostly Jeff Jarrett. Jeff is at the Summer Ball Summit speaking today, so we're going to do a little remix action talking about TNA on Monday nights. What a big opportunity this was, or so people thought. I mean, it worked for WCW. Surely it'll work for TNA, right? Well, maybe not so much. I asked Jeff about signing Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan. Of course, we're going to talk about Hulk Hogan's TNA debut, going head-to-head with WWE and Monday Night Raw, going to a 4-sided ring, abandoning the 6-sided ring, and of course, AJ Styles versus Kurt Angle in the main event, and so much more. Let's do a little throwback action here on your ride to work. Check it out. It's My World. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Conrad, I'm ready to go today. It's going to be an interesting one. You know, we gave the keys to the My World listeners, and it was pretty diverse, horsemen, some different topics, and they landed on this, which I thought was pretty curious, but doing well. Lots of moving parts in my world, signings, and lots of great feedback from the ad-free family and the My World listeners. And of course, the proverbial Jeff Conrad is exactly right. I hated your freaking. A lot of times they didn't use freaking, but good old fans in Philly got right down to it. But man, it's the feedback. So I've done a few signings, Conrad. I'm going off on a tangent already, but you know, when you have a little time to hear one-on-one feedback, doing autographs, it's fascinating what people like. And, you know, I took your orders and said, hey man, get a little feedback from our listeners. And I did. And it's I'll just say this is a whole new adventure. We're 21 episodes in, but a whole new adventure, and the feedback from guys from all ages and gals, but been really interesting. I'll just say that.
So what did they tell you they liked?
Granular. Love when you get into the business side of things. 100%. They like the little catchphrases. But they do like, and I think this, and we've talked obviously on the podcast, off the podcast. And they always jumped out. Hey man, you really talk about the business side of things, and you're open and honest about, you know, numbers and stuff like that. But, you know, they said, hey, Eric on 83 weeks, he'll get into the business side of things. And it's like, I had a really, I don't say lengthy, but, you know, 5-minute conversation. And the guy goes, you know, I grew up a huge wrestling fan and always knew there was a business behind it. But with you and Conrad, and they put you over and talked about your research. But he says, you know, it just, as a fan, he said, I'm much more, here's what I loved. Here's where I'm going with it all. I was told to me numerous numerous times, but just different ways. But I'm more of a fan of professional wrestling today than I was as a kid because I understand it more. I thought that was pretty cool. So kudos to you and your team.
Well, kudos to you for allowing us to be so granular. I mean, these are your stories, and I know you think of me as being the captain of the ship, but this is your show. I just happen to be the first listener, and I'm uniquely qualified to know what we want to listen to. I'm our target demographic. Our listeners are 98%
slipping out of that, pal. No,
I'm just saying our listeners are 40 years old, roughly. And I'm 40, and they grew up watching this same era of wrestling, and they're 98% male. And last time I checked, I still am too. So yeah, it's been fun. This experience.
Megan, come here.
Yeah. She checked for us recently. Hey, we decided to throw you guys the keys to the show today. We did something totally different. Normally we map out shows like a freaking year at a time, and I'm focusing on anniversaries of major moments, of major happenings. We'll feature some birthdays. Of course, we'll slip in, some random ask Jeff or whatever. But today we're doing something a little different. We put up a tweet over at My World Pod. If you haven't already, follow us there at My World Pod. And we said, hey, what do you guys want to hear? And the top 4 topics we put on a poll, and then you guys got to vote. And the winner is what we're covering today. And I think we might do that again. We might start doing this once a month, once every other month, but we're going to let you guys have a little more control, but we need your input. So if you haven't already, follow us on social at My World Pod. And we'll even get to see some of Jeff Jarrett's football picks. I saw you threw some picks up this week.
How about that Penn State last night?
Yeah. I all of a sudden this game, or this past weekend, we had way more close games than I expected. Alabama had a close call. Auburn nearly pulled it off against Penn State. It looked pretty grim for Oklahoma against Nebraska once upon a time. Everybody kept it close. There were no blowouts, no dominating teams like we've seen or like we expected.
And just to jump in on that, we've got SEC picks, some football picks. We've got some NFL picks. Working with the ad-free team. Shout out to Marcus, but we're trying to do some fun stuff over there. The Slapnuts moment of the week, Punk's debut match was that, but we're also getting a poll just to see what our listeners like, don't like, what they're voting on. And like you said, they voted our topic today, and I'll let you roll it out here when you're ready. But it's throwing the keys to them, but it's just it was really fascinating. I love reading the comments on the football picks, because there's some folks that want to get granular on that, and I'm like, hey, I'm just picking 3 winners. Relax. But
it's not that deep. But today we are going to get deep. I don't know that there's any way we can cover this topic in one single show, but we're going to do our best to. It feels like we're going to be ripe for sidebars here, Jeff, and I'm going to ask for your cooperation, and let's not sidebar, because if we're not careful, this becomes a 12-hour episode.
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to peter out. I want to stay strong till the end. That feels like that could have been an ad right there. Anyway, what you guys picked was TNA's debut on Monday night. And boy, did they have a lot planned that day. Pretty special show. Before we get into it, we should, I guess, catch up from last week. Hard Justice 06 was in the archives a couple of weeks ago. And then last week we talked about David Arquette. And I think a lot of people expected a different type of episode for me and you on David Arquette. That's at least what I saw. I saw really strong feedback for that, because I don't think a lot of people had, as I like to say, put 2 and 2 together. What feedback did you see about our Arquette episode?
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Just, I wasn't real surprised at the feedback, because when we got done last week, I felt that we did David, the story, all the different moving parts from Ready to Rumble to, I'll call it Kemper Arena, to David, the human being. Just all that really went into that, and the different layers upon layers. And WCW creative was a mess. I mean, reading whether it was Wade's or Dave's or whatever the commentary was, just trying to follow that, as I said at the top of the episode last week, it was a freaking mess. But that sort of lends to, if you don't have one boss steering the ship, now you got to have a lot of folks working under you and rowing in the same direction. But my God, Vince is, and I say Russo's trying to write a show, but you got Ready to Rumble, and then you've got, just all the layer upon layer of the Millionaires Club, and then you have David Arquette, who signs up to do a movie, and now he's cast not as a supporting, to use a Hollywood term. He wasn't even a cameo role. He went from a cameo role on a wrestling show to literally the lead actor. And he just ran the play. So I thought we did it justice. I felt real good after last week's, that, okay, we told the whole story, didn't get too long-winded, but we definitely told a complete story of where David's heart was, where his head was at, our relationship, your relationship with him. I was happy with last week's.
Me too, man. Really dug it. Hope if you haven't already, you'll go check it out. It's not the episode that you're expecting. It's better. But let's jump into why we're here. And this is a big one, man. There's no way, as we said, to cover it all in one show. We're going to do our best. We'll probably want to circle back and do long form on Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff coming into TNA another time. But at least at this point, why do you think it was important for Hulk and Eric to be involved on a Monday night opportunity against Monday Night Raw?
Trying to, Conrad, believe me, the ad-free team, I've had multiple discussions, probably more pre-discussions on this episode than I've had, I'll say ever, because we haven't been going that long. But anyway, just to stay focused on January the 4th, 2010 is what this episode is about. But like you said, there is layer upon layer upon layer that goes into this. And for the lack of a better word, and I'll just sort of jump off here, from June 19th, 2002 till end of July 2009, I was the executive producer of every episode. This was the first episode that I was at, and my only role was as a talent. So I cannot, and I could just give you my perceptions, but I wasn't on the inside of baking this cake and why Monday night and on Hogan's debut. I'll tell you what I know, probably just as important on this episode, sort of what I don't know, but I don't know why they were so adamant on his debut to be on Monday night.
So when you said his debut, we're talking about Hulk Hogan.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about Hulk Hogan coming in and how you were flirting with him once upon a time, but I want to let's do a quick appetizer. You had been trying to get Hulk Hogan to be a part of the promotion for a while, even when you were quote unquote running the show, right?
2002, 2003. Yes. And then I may be getting this off and I don't want to get all the dates, but when he came back and worked with Rock, I mean, then he did Mr. America or Captain America, but when he went back to Vince, those discussions were off.
And and we're going to talk about this another time, or actually pretty soon, when you were flirting with Hogan and you did the whole angle with the guitar and the blood and the whole thing. But the idea is, I want to be clear here. You weren't opposed to Hogan being a part of the promotion. I think the opposition from your end was, I don't know if we need to be head to head with Monday Night Raw. Yeah. Oh no. Be very clear. I can't say the number one cheerleader, but as I witnessed and was a part of and saw the needle move from action figures to video games to boardrooms with Sting. Okay. I mean, I saw that. So Hulk Hogan would do if not more, diplomatically, if not more, move the needle and the chess pieces even more. So I was a big part of Hogan being an ambassador, a really big cheerleader for it, and told Bob Carter as such. So on Monday night, when do you first remember hearing the conversation? I mean, Brian Diamond of Spike flat out said in October of '09 that the signing of Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff is to, quote, strengthen Thursday nights in their current time slot. So when did that change, and why did it change, and how did it change? That's what we're talking about. But Meltzer would report right away. There's talk of those close to Hogan that he's claiming part of the deal for him coming in is that Impact will go live on Monday nights from 8 to 10, starting on January 4th, the first weekend after football season ends. As noted, Brian Diamond of Spike has denied this is the case, saying their goal is to build up Thursdays. Those in TNA who were aware of Hogan coming in ahead of time were not aware of any change in television time. However, those being pitched to come in by the Hogan side have been pitched on the idea of recreating the Monday Night Wars. While it has not been said, within TNA, the belief is Hogan will come in the first of the year. In theory, such a situation would be the best thing possible for the business. Jeff Jarrett, when he was running TNA, his goal was to get on Monday from the start. The problem is the only one-time Impact and Raw went head to head, which was a Thursday in 2007 when Raw was moved by the USA Network because of the dog show. The TNA audience was cut in half of what it had usually done, falling from a 1.12 rating and 1.6 million viewers the week before to a 0.59 rating and 726,000 viewers. That rating had scared a lot of people off of the Monday night goal. So listen, this is a tangled web, but well, so is TNA. So let's try to walk it back piece by piece here. Were you ever at any point, not 2010, but at any point, a proponent of Monday night?
Look, I can't say that my fleeting brain, because I was right in the middle and going back and forth, and that's a whole bunch of different episodes. I was right in the middle of the Monday Night Wars, that didn't cross my mind. But from the very beginning, and Kevin Kay, president of Spike, Brian Diamond, Scott Fishman, myself, video game folks, all that, we were the alternative and everything that went with it. And I was never, as Dave writes his fiction in this weekly newsletter. Look at you shaking your head.
Why would you say that to get us started? You're a heat set. You're a heel.
No, I'm not. I'm just poking fun at you. But no, I was never a proponent of going to Monday nights. Never, ever, ever. Did it not cross my mind? Sure, I was in the Monday Night Wars. But did I want to do that? No. And the episode that you're referring to and the Westminster Dog Show and everything that went with that. And here's the other sort of guiding light through all this. Me, Brian Diamond, Scott Fishman, because we were the ones taking notes on every show and in the post, and that relationship that was, a lot of times on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I talked to them more than anybody in the world on show notes. We never flirted with that, and we're very happy. And I would always Iggy them or cajole them or, hey man, we can't get everything in this 2-hour show. What about another hour show? Maybe Tuesday, maybe a weekend recap. Maybe we were on Saturday nights at one time, anything to add content. That was a running conversation, but nothing about Mondays.
So any sort of, do you remember other people in the organization prior to Hogan and Bischoff coming in championing the idea of a Monday Night War recreation?
No, I don't. In that, going back to, as we had that, however you want to say it, the traction, and from Saturday nights off prime to Thursday nights off prime to Thursday night 1 hour prime to Thursday nights 2 hour prime. That was a real good success story. I can remember the Spike folks and, why tinker with that? And what was it? What was the benefit of it? It just wasn't, it wasn't there. And in those days, our 1.5 million to 2 versus their 5.5-ish million, 6, 4.5, whatever the number may be, there was just no upside, none. And here was why Spike was adamantly against it. is the ad dollar. Are you going to, it just didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense because you're splitting the audience.
For sure. And with UFC, I mean, just with the UFC relationship and gosh, there was a lot of content UFC on during this time. It wasn't a good business decision on any level.
It's something that you learned from, though, when you tried the dog show head-to-head experiment. On the heels of that, Dixie's a part of the organization then. What did Dixie think when you guys tried the Thursday experiment that went sideways?
I'm not sure we tried it. I don't recall exactly because, USA, that experiment was forced on us. We were already on Thursdays and USA chose to move to Thursdays.
But she at least was curious, right? Like, hey, well, how's this going to shake out?
Oh gosh. When we get into sort of all this, however you want to table it. And again, it's another episode and I'm staying on point, but July of 2009. So, let's go to August, September, October, November, December. Dixie Carter was in control. It was at the end of the day. And this is why I told the company attorney, you need to let Spike know I'm no longer executive producer. Yeah. I don't think that I'm positive. It never took place for a year and a half. That was one thing, but the decisions being made, she just wasn't curious. She absolutely, we can say Hogan wanted to go on Monday nights. It ultimately was Dixie's decision.
Let's, man, it's going to be hard to do this without hurting some feelings, but we're going to do it anyway.
Truth.
Right off the bat, it said that bringing Hogan in and changing the time slot was part of the deal. Do you remember that piece of the negotiation or discussion, or were you not involved with those discussions?
I was, again, the however you want to call the, power play, whatever we want to table it. Double cross there. It's been told to me several different ways when I've been asked. It depends on how people want me to respond. But when Dixie became the executive producer, I think maybe a simple diplomatic way, those discussions, the creative of the show, the Monday night discussions. And here's another, not a footnote, but as we get into it, when Eric came in sort of day one, he was in support of Hulk. It wasn't Bischoff Hervey. It wasn't that type. That in the very early days, and I don't want to say Eric was Hulk's confidant. At least that was how it was explained to me, and I observed that, and it aligned pretty well with that.
And you're not involved in this Monday night discussion. You have essentially been squeezed out of those conversations.
I mean, it goes without saying. I flew to Tampa with Dixie in September-ish of 2009. Met with Hulk and Eric, and sort of, we'll say me and Dixie did the TNA pitch. And for all intents and purposes, that's the last conversation because it's been documented. I was sent home with pay and we'll figure this out. And that's what I'm saying is I wasn't a part of these Monday night discussions.
So that had to do with something else, and we'll talk about that another time. I guess what I wanted to know is there was no residual heat, brother, about Bash at the Beach or any WCW shit at all.
None. I mean, literally, it's pretty obvious. Dixie, at that point, she could have made the choice. Jeff, I don't want you to go. She called me. I don't want to say a cold call, but we hadn't talked in multiple weeks. Hey, I really want you to go to Tampa. And, communication, and we've had this conversation today and other days, communication is vital to every relationship. I would have given anything as I look back on this time frame for me and Eric to have a wide open line of communication because things would have been radically different.
And at the time, did you feel, I don't know how to ask this the proper way. Were you job scared and that's the reason you didn't do, or were you crestfallen over the way you had been squeezed out?
No, I was instructed to not have communications, period.
But you're part of the ownership group.
Yes.
So who tells you what to do?
That was instructed by the attorney at Panda. You ever been a minority owner?
This has not been a fun experience at that point. Fair to say?
Have you ever been a minority owner? I'm just curious. I really am.
No.
We don't get sidebar, but have you?
No.
Okay. And I'm saying that completely out of all due respect.
Yeah. And you're saying that means being an owner just means, hey, if we make money, you get a little more money. And if we lose money, you get a little less money, but, you don't really have any say.
You don't have the final say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was, again, you can call it whatever, but it was very obvious from August, September, October, November, December that quote unquote Jeff's crew was gone and a whole new crew was on the way in. And so, that's a whole nother episode because we can get into names and.
Yeah, we will, but just candidly real quick, and then we'll move on. It's been my understanding that, for lack of a better phrase, the Carter family were the financial backers. That's what they brought the financing to the dance.
Yes.
And you brought the wrestling experience. And now with Hulk Hogan and maybe more specifically Eric Bischoff, now they don't feel like they have to have Jeff's input as much. Fair?
I would not categorize the Carters as one.
Okay.
To be fair to Bob and Janice.
Well, what I was trying to get to is they needed a wrestling person. Bischoff and Hogan are going to be the new wrestling people, right?
Yes. I wouldn't even put Bischoff because he was more of a support role. Dixie wanted to be the wrestling person. I just want to be clear that I'm positive Hulk didn't know what really he was stepping into. He didn't know the backstory. He didn't know we'll call it the drama. Hey, he's coming on board. Look, the Carters were pretty happy in 2009 with the money that they were getting on the return. When things went south, I think it's easy to call it a power play. Dixie wanted to run the company. I don't know any softer way to say that.
Okay, let's jump into it because it feels like we got to talk about that another time. The NBA is back tonight. It's finally happening, and a new season means new ways to get into the action on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who's draining threes from beyond the arc? Who's crashing the boards and grabbing those rebounds? Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Is this going to be your first time? Well, new DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Every point counts with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use our code MyWorld. That's code MyWorld for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccp.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/bball. The November 5th is a standout television moment. Dixie Carter is going to address the talent in the stands for a meeting taped before TV. And of course it's going to air. It opened with Dixie Carter doing a speech before the tapings with most of the talent there. She talked about making new moves, Hogan coming in, although she never mentioned that in specific, and that changes are to be made and that they are swinging for the fences. She said things were going to change and you're either 100% supporting her direction and not questioning any decisions, or you need to find another place to work. The speech was an edited version of a legitimate team meeting with all the talent sitting in the stands, out of character, listening. This was partially in response to the very mixed reaction for making the move to bring in Hogan, as well as a reaction to the talent unrest at the recent taping, sending a message. It has been heavily speculated that it was also the beginning of Carter making herself a television character. I love the way Dave phrased this, which may explain why it aired on television. Yeah.
Yeah. You think?
She noted that everything will be different. The least they could have done was do the real speech, then shoot a facsimile and have the wrestlers told to act excited instead of like second graders being told that recess is being replaced with literature class. I know the idea was to give people a peek behind the curtain, and I know a lot of people watching this took it the wrong way. It was pretty difficult to get into anything on the wrestling show after seeing this because you sense that everyone and everything is lame duck until the changes are made. So there's no point in investing anything right now. So we're going to talk about that meeting in long form some other time. But when this airs on TV, did you feel like from a wrestling standpoint, it is exactly what Dave said? It's lame duck. So we're just sort of biding time to get there.
When I watched it, and obviously we've sort of just touched on this time in my career, I watched every minute of everything, and knowing not some of the players, every player in the room down to the guy who's pulling cable for the camera. You know what I'm saying? And I had immediate compassion because I said, nobody will tell her what she doesn't know. I had that conversation. Nobody will tell her, hey, if we're going to put this on TV, let's show some emotion that the guys are like, yeah. Or even a guy maybe up in the back shaking his head like, I'm not so sure, some type of emotion. And I don't know if you got the clip, but you watch that back. I felt uncomfortable for the talent sitting in the stands.
We're going to play that clip when we talk about Hogan and Bischoff coming in long form and that whole situation where you go home and all that another time. But the big news comes on the December 5th at the Ultimate Fighter finale. We've got Hogan, Bischoff, and Dixie Carter at the show. From the Observer, quote, TNA officially made the announcement on December 5th at the Ultimate Fighter final that Hulk Hogan's first live appearance at the Impact Zone would be a live 3-hour Impact from 8 to 11 p.m. on January 4th. Hogan, Carter, and Bischoff were at the UFC event to push the show. Carter said she kept the news from everyone in the company. Spike TV officials asked UFC for the favor and taped the interview with them before the show started and inserted it into the show. The original plan was going 8 to 10, but according to a Spike official, they believed WWE would, as a response, move its show to the same night or on the same night to 3 hours. So they decided to get the jump on that move. It's a one-time deal at this point, but it is an experiment. If the rating for the show is good, most likely going 2 hours live on Mondays would be in the card. Still, even though Spike and TNA officials are saying it's a one-time thing, Hogan's been recruiting talent, saying that he didn't make his deal until Spike and TNA agreed to a 2-year commitment to run Mondays, and that Spike had already agreed to it. Other things Hogan has said, besides it's a full-time commitment where he himself would do some wrestling matches, but mainly run the show, is that they would go back to the 4-sided ring.
I'll say it for you. Lot to unpack here, Jeff. Lot to unpack here.
I can only imagine when you're sitting at home maybe you're not mad, but you're at least annoyed. And you hear, because as I've learned just in 5 years, there are no secrets in wrestling. It's telephone, telegram, telewrestler. If Hogan's having conversations about recruiting talent, it's not like you threw your phone in the river. Guys are calling you saying, hey, Jeff, and you're hearing a version of what Hogan's presenting. Oh yeah, we're going to Monday nights. Oh yeah, it's going to be 2 hours. Oh yeah, we're going to a 4-sided ring. And you've been instructed not to talk to anyone, but that doesn't mean people can't call you. Scale of 1 to 10, how annoyed and frustrated are you when all this is happening?
And you have to really get into the moment, but you have to understand, and we covered it on this. I went into great detail. We're going over the numbers in Dallas, Texas, and Bob Carter has got the newspaper about the Tennessee Titans. But you can throw away everything. Bob Carter invested in Jeff Jarrett. Period. End of story. That's exactly what he signed up to do.
Yes.
I mean, you know, we can talk politics and wrestling and telephone telegraph, all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, I was well aware that Bob invested in Jeff. And I thought to myself, when I would hear those things, and like the four-sided ring, you touched on that, I'm thinking there's no way they're not that dumb. But they also, hindsight's 2020, they didn't do 100 live events in 2009 and 2008, 80 something, 2000, whatever. They didn't have a clue. And I'm saying the new regime coming in, Dixie never went to a live event, and she wasn't a wrestling person at all. So, but hearing that different kind of stuff, but you would, yes, aggravated, annoyed, but also, God almighty, I wish I could pick up the phone and call Bob. Oh man. I mean, believe me, that's the first, that was really my first always reaction. Man, I wish Bob understood this.
Hang on. You're telling me that you couldn't call the other owners that are your partners?
Who's their daughter? The president of the organization. And if they were to, we'll say, go along, turn a blind eye, believe every word that came out of her mouth, they are the one who said, Jeff, you're no longer executive producer, you're talent. And my daughter is the president, the executive producer, the boss, and every decision rests on her shoulders. That's what went down. What would you have done?
I understand. So you're saying it's not a matter of I couldn't, it's a matter of it's no use.
Zero use.
No chance that they pick you over their daughter.
And do you really think Bob understood Monday nights and Thursday nights? And no, he didn't. Hey, I want more money. I want to make more money. Dixie and team says, we're going to make more money out of this. Jeff, let's go for it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not laying it on Bob.
A friend of ours who we both love. What? Told me once.
My world pod.
Told me once that Mr. Carter, who was a very wealthy man, would go to the golf club, the country club, and they go to like the little 19th hole after and have a burger and a beer and what have you. Supposedly, a conversation might happen that sounded something like this. You know that Hulk Hogan guy? Yeah, he works for me. Do you think perhaps the Carters believed that where Hulk Hogan goes, wrestling goes? And at this point, because he is arguably, maybe not even arguably, the biggest star, most important star in the history of wrestling, who gives a shit what Jeff Jarrett thinks? We got Hulk Hogan.
And I have had this conversation in multiple interviews. I had this conversation, me and my dad, one of those sidebars and all this. Nobody from, we'll say 83, but prior to that, Hogan main evented it. Look, Memphis is nothing. AWA, nothing. Okay, wait a minute. He went over and had a hell of a Japan run. If you look at some Japan matches from the Hulkster, dude could go.
Yeah.
But when Hulkamania took off and then the NWO took off, look at that at face value. He is the biggest box office attraction, in my opinion, that this industry has ever produced. Who else has had his run? I mean, he just, look, you can say whether it went good or not. He was just the co-host in 2021. There's no debating that. Now, nobody, unless you really understand the industry, okay, that's a talent. or that's a promo guy or whatever it may be. It's not an executive. That conversation obviously came later and for another podcast, but that was what my mindset was. And you just nailed it right on the head. It would not do any good except cause me more trouble.
Oh man, this is going to be, we're going to have fun when we get to talk about all the little sidebars here. You weren't there. Of course, you're in Hendersonville. Hey, what'd you do with all the extra free time?
I won't call this the summer no worries of 2010.
This was the winter of frustration of 2010.
Yeah, I mean, wife and 5 kids. Think about that.
Full-time job. You're good.
Yes.
So you're watching The Ultimate Fighter, which has become a juggernaut, and your product's on there, which is, my God, what great cross promotion.
Oh,
at the time I was not watching wrestling, but I was a huge, and still am a huge, literally, UFC fan. And I saw Hulk Hogan and I'm like, wait a minute, what is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
So it got my attention. So this stunt was a good call. Did you know of it before it was happening, or are they keeping you so far out of the loop that you're just watching TV like everybody else?
Heard the scuttlebutt or whatever. I mean, this is a PR move, but definitely heard this kind of stuff. I heard a lot of this kind of stuff. Oh, we're making this move and that move and this move. And I thought, I mean, kudos to Hulk, kudos to Dixie, kudos to TNA, but also, Dana White has a lot of folks do cameos.
Yeah.
I'm sure Dana didn't say, oh God, no, we're not putting Hulk Hogan. Of course they're going to welcome him in. I mean, who wouldn't want Hulk Hogan sitting ringside? Period. It worked for all parties involved. Hulk, TNA, Dixie, Eric, Kevin K, Dana White, Ultimate Fighter. It's a win-win.
So you find out, hey, we're going Monday night. And at that point, is it just so cold that there's no dialogue with you and Dixie at all?
Correct.
And so at that point, it's sort of speak when spoken to. They'll call you when they need you type of deal.
Yes.
What did you think the goal of the experiment was? Did you ever hear, hey, we're hoping to get this number or that many viewers? It does feel like, and I know some people don't follow this logic, but let me just give some other examples.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's right next to Lowe's here in Huntsville? Home Depot.
Yes, I'm with you.
And you know what's right next to Nissan, Mercedes, and they're across the street from Dodge, who is next door to Subaru.
Great analogy.
Right up the road from Audi. And there even used to be a part of town called Gasoline Alley. So you got Shell next to Conoco across the street from, you get where I'm going.
Oh, for sure.
And I do think there is wisdom to that. Like one of the biggest Mexican restaurants forever here in Huntsville is Rosie's Cantina.
Love it.
And then he built one across the street from where he had been forever. And so now he had this Mexican themed restaurant that he had abandoned, that he owned the building for, but he needed more space. So he thought, well, why don't I just name it something else and make it another Mexican restaurant? A lot of people will still come here because it's just the same location. And maybe some people who are loyal to the brand Rosie's, maybe instead of pulling into Rosie's, they'll see, oh man, it's an hour wait over here. Well, let's go to the Mexican restaurant across the street, which he also owned. So I'm saying all that to say there is wisdom in, hey, people are in tune with, they're going to watch wrestling on Monday night. And oh, by the way, this is the channel that show used to be on. So if you were a lapsed fan and you're flipping through and it's Spike and there's wrestling, you might think, oh, well, here it is. There's wrestling on Monday night. The brand loyalty is another thing. If it's appointment television for you, you're going to find it, but the casual viewer, they're flipping through the channels. Oh, look, Hulk Hogan. Well, that makes sense. It's Monday night. So I get it, but I'm curious. Do you know the internal strategy? Was it, we're going to hurt WWE? We're going to steal some of their audience. or we'll just pick up casual fans who just stumble across us because they think, oh, well, it's Monday. This must be wrestling.
My delusional optimism has been a lifetime trait. So I was in a alignment with what you said. Hey, it's a special. We're going to come out of the gate with Hogan's premiere, debut. We're going to make a lot of noise. The thing that, and you touched on it just a little bit ago, that the continuous feedback, we're moving to Mondays. We're moving to Mondays. We're going to come out of the gate Monday and we're going to do this and going to do that. I'm like, not so fast. Cause when you look, and I know going into the fall, the ratings are going to go down, but there was a big shift in talent in a lot of ways. The main event mafia was running up through July, August, and that was for the better part of January to August. And those guys went away, and, there was a turnover of talent and then a whole new crop of talent coming in. There was a lot of, there were so many different moving parts. But the permanent move to Monday was what was a head scratcher coming out of the gate, because, correct me if I'm wrong. I like to do a little research. If I'm right, we came out on Monday of that week, and I think we had a replay on Thursday. So it's making a lot of noise. What you said, stepping on to the Hulk Hogan, stepping into we'll call it the Hulk Hogan era, with making as much noise as possible. I thought that was a strategic move.
Did you think, or do you think that Dixie thought that when wrestling fans had to choose, fans were going to flip the channel from WWE to TNA, or they would go back and forth? I mean, do you know what she was thinking strategy wise was the goal?
No. And because to this day, asking me to figure out Dixie's strategy, and I mean this out of like complete respect, I do not know what the answer to that question would be if we were to ask her then or now. I don't know.
Here's where I'm driving at.
Yeah.
A lot of people have sort of categorized Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon's relationship as a love-hate relationship, where they're best buddies and they're really proud of what all they accomplished, and they got so much history and they couldn't have done it without each other, and so thankful and appreciative. And then the next time you see them, they hate each other's fucking guts, and they were both a bum and they could have did it without the other one. Now, I've never talked to either one about that, but that is certainly the way it's been categorized at different times. Have you heard, or were you under the same impression that it was a love-hate relationship at times?
So I get the blessing or curse or the grace or whatever it is. I have seen the promoter top talent relationship, not just Vince and Hulk. I didn't really have to guess about that, but I heard once upon a time, Jimmy Crockett and Dusty Rhodes were the best of friends. And then there were some numbers that came in and they weren't so much the best of friends. And I am positive it's sometimes Austin Idol was my old man, Jeff Jarrett's favorite wrestler in the world. And then other times they hated each other. And the same goes for Bill Dundee. And look, my dad and Lawler were partners, but it wasn't all rosy all the time. That's the nature of the beast between the top guy and the promoter, period. And so that's how I always perceived Hulk and Vince's relationship.
So my question is, do you believe perhaps some of Hogan's motivation to doing a Monday night show was, yeah, we're going to stick it to Vince?
For sure.
That's where we fucked up. I mean,
look, Hulk never told me that, but Hulk is a top talent and everything that goes with that. Ego driven, and I'm saying that in a positive way, but yes, that Hulk wanted to make as much money as fast as he possibly could. So how do we do that? Oh man, if we come out of the gate, I'm getting a raise if we start winning on Monday nights. If it doesn't work, I know they can't cut my pay. Why are you shaking your head?
I know they can't cut my pay. It's just, I mean, the reality is this was a way, and listen, I've never talked to Hulk about this, but if you know that they don't like each other and that it is contentious and that he left over money and he was frustrated with payoffs, or, I mean, whatever other reason top guys and promoters and owners don't get along, But now this is a way for me to prove that I don't need Vince McMahon. I can do this myself. And hey, I don't even have to use my money to do it. Because let's not forget, he had tried to start a little promotion a time or two before. And now here's a billionaire saying, well, we'll just pay you a bunch of guaranteed money. Just come do it here. Sounds like a win-win deal to me. Especially given what was going on in his personal life. He's going through a divorce. He's looking to get some cash back in and move on from that divorce. And so there's a lot of moving parts here, but it does feel like, do you ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I have watched, but I'm not a regular watcher.
You're familiar with the show.
Yeah. Yes.
So they have this store called Mocha Joe's coffee shop that they go to. And one day, the main character, Larry David, gets into what we'd call in the South, a pissing match with old Mocha Joe. And Mocha Joe throws him out of the store and bans him. On the way to the car, Larry realizes the suite right next door to Mocha Joe in the strip mall is available for lease. So he opens Latte Larry's.
I love this.
And he calls it a spite store. Larry had never ran a coffee shop. Larry was not interested in coffee. He just felt like he could do it better than Mocha Joe. And Mocha Joe's an asshole who was mean to him. So now I'm going to open a spite store to prove that I can do this better than Mocha Joe and put Mocha Joe out of business because I don't like Mocha Joe. And it was called a spite store. And when I hear this story, and I look at it and I think, wait a minute. I understand from Bischoff's perspective, he's got the track record where he said, well, I went head to head with Vince McMahon and I beat him. So why couldn't I do it again? I had the support of one billionaire, just a different billionaire. We got the support of Spike. We can do this. Bischoff's flaw, of course, is Vince's company was on the ropes in 95. Y'all were running fucking high schools when Nitro started. Now, fast forward in 2010, the WWE is now a publicly traded company. Vince McMahon's no longer a millionaire. Now he's a billionaire. It's going to be a little hard to gain market share on a guy who can pay anybody whatever they want. That was not the case in 95. And by the way, Nitro just was what it was until they opened up that checkbook. But now that we understand it's not millionaire versus billionaire, it's billionaire versus billionaire. This is a stacked deck. But from Hogan's standpoint, I can't help but think about him and Larry David and them moving to Monday night. It's Latte Larry's here on Monday, is it not?
Latte Larry's on Monday. I will say that again, this you're asking me a question about Hogan's mindset. You ever read the book E-Myth?
No.
About entrepreneurial mindset. And there's in one brain, there's an entrepreneur, there's a technician, and then there's a manager. But all in one brain, it's a constant battle of, you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to manage things and, you know, manage the business, or you're going to be a technician, and that's getting the work done. So, and I say all that to say that I think in Hogan's mind, he wanted money. That was his priority. And like I said, I'm going to negotiate a deal. And remember, his boss is Dixie. So that's the relationship. That's the incentive. How do I make more money? Well, that again, I wasn't obviously a part of any of those one-on-one discussions, but somehow, some way out of those discussions came, let's go Monday nights and do a special. And hey, let's go full-time Monday nights. And I believe maybe Hogan wanted to run the coffee shop, as you alluded to, but I think at the very top of that priority is, I want to make more money.
And listen, I'm not saying, I mean, I understand that Hogan is business first and foremost, but it's been my experience that most spite stores fail.
Sure.
You open a new business, not because you want to hurt the other guy, but because you want to build your own.
As the alternative.
In the hip hop community, they refer to this as pocket watching. Hey, I see how much money Vince McMahon's making on Monday. I bet we can too. Or if he's making all that, we deserve our, doesn't always work that way. You know, Bischoff has preached for a long time on 83 weeks. You can be less than, you can be better than, or you can be different than. And frankly, there was no way that Impact could have been better than, but they could have been different than. And things like the 6-sided ring made them different than. But if we're going to be on the same night with the same ring, with the same old stars, now it's less than, and it didn't work.
And hindsight's 2020, but as not just looking over the notes, but in multiple conversations, and not to jump ahead too far, but for 11 out of 12 months in 2013, I was negotiating to buy back majority interest. So I knew the numbers better than anybody in the world. That was my job. I'm not patting myself on the back. It was my job to know things and look at things. But when you really look at things, we transformed, I say we, TNA, the product transformed, the alternative to WWE Light on January 4th.
Help me understand. Where does Vince Russo fall in all of this? Because there's no chance that Hogan was pumped about working with him, giving everything that happened in WCW. But you were pals with Vince. Were you talking to Vince about all of this? And what was his lot in life now that Hogan was coming in here?
Again, we're going to get down rabbit holes and different podcasts and different subjects, but he was Dixie Carter's right-hand man. And they, it's no secret. Vince knew what was facing him with Hulk and Eric coming in. And he also knew that Dixie's, we'll say, strengths and weaknesses. And Dixie wasn't a wrestling person and wasn't a television writer. And also Dixie wanted to be on TV. And so perception, you can just sort of look at the whole scenario. Just like Hulk wanted more money and got his contract, and the minute he signed that contract, figured out, how can I make more money? Vince was saying, probably, how can I hold on to my job? And so I got to hold on to my paycheck. So what I need to do, I'm going to be Dixie's right-hand man. And that's what he was.
I got to feel like, from a Monday night perspective, you look back at the way things ended in WWE and with WCW, and knowing I don't know Vince the way you know Vince. I know Vince a little bit, but the idea that he too felt like, wait, here's another chance to compete with Vince McMahon and get back in the Monday Night War, where I had my most success with Vince, but people ever since have said I needed a filter and blah, blah, blah. This would be a chance for me to right the wrongs and sort of write the end of my own story and change the narrative and all those cliches. But it feels like Vince Russo would have been wringing his hands at the opportunity to be on Monday night. Was he in support of this?
I can't say that I don't honestly know that I know I didn't ask him, but I don't even know if we really discussed Monday nights versus Thursday nights. He knew he had to hold on to his paycheck. That was very obvious. And he knew who his boss was. And if you look at, we'll just say, Jeff's team, Vince was the only one that, for the most part, survived. And that was due to his relationship with Dixie. And so he probably wasn't so much worried about Monday versus Thursday. I think much further up the list of priority is, how do I hold on to my job? Because I have a strong feeling, just like you said, Hulk don't want to work with me. And he's coming in and he's driving the car and he's running the show and he's hiring talent, and I better get along here.
Let me ask, do you think Russo survived when Jeff's team was shown the door? Because he's a master political gamesman and he figured out how to keep his job and make Dixie happy. Or B, Dixie felt like, well, if I'm going Monday night and we're recreating the Monday Night War, I got to have Vince Russo.
Obviously I learned this years later, but it was told to me from numerous folks that were in the room when Vince would call Dixie leaving the creative meetings. So Vince he was, however you want to say it, hedging his bets, being
Political.
Yes. He had a very, very good relationship with Dixie long before.
Said another way, you were friends with Jeff. I mean, you're Jeff. You were friends with Vince, or Vince was friends with you. I'll get it right. Vince is friends with you, but he knew his bread was buttered with Dixie.
Sure.
Okay. Hey man, listen up when you finish this podcast. If you're looking for another great one, don't let the fun stop when this one ends. Check out our buddy Chris Van Vliet's podcast. It's called Insight with Chris Van Vliet, and my man's doing some of the most interesting and in-depth wrestling interviews that you'll find anywhere. Chris asks great questions that allow his guests to really open up and tell the stories they've never told before. And man, he has been hammering some big guests recently. He had Cody Rhodes and Dave Bautista and Drew McIntyre, The Undertaker, even Jesse the Body Ventura, and hundreds of others. Hell, even I've been there. And I can't recommend it enough. Chris Van Vliet's doing a great job. And if you can't get enough pro wrestling content, look no further than Insight with Chris Van Vliet. It's on YouTube as well as Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you're listening to this. It's Insight with Chris Van Vliet. And as an old hillbilly from Alabama, let me just say, I had to double check the spelling. So let me spell it for you. VLIET. Chris Van Vliet, Insight with Chris Van Vliet. It's your hookup on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or anywhere else you're enjoying podcasts. Check it out. You'll be glad you did. So the WWE finally announced that they're ready for this Monday Night War, because they announced that Bret Hart will return to the WWE for the first time since 1997. Of course, he went in the Hall of Fame, but he's going to be back on Raw for the first time since 1997.
Think about that.
When you, in hindsight, you know, we used to all hear, oh, TNA's no competition, blah, blah, blah. You had to be chuckling to yourself when you see that's a major move, is it not?
Sure. And then, like, this wasn't the first time, but I would always get those folks, whether internally in the office or just whatever, like, Vince McMahon doesn't even think TNA exists. You know, that whole running conversation. I'm like, guys, you know, and I'm not going to say Howard Finkel, but Vince knows exactly. It's not like he sat down and watched Impact, but he had his folks. And look, prior to us getting on Spike, correct, I don't believe we were really on Vince's radar. Getting a major cable broadcast deal, that put us on Vince's radar. And I just, when they announced Brett and the whole 3 hours and everything that went with it, of course I chuckled. I'm like, okay, here comes this gunfight, and we've got a butter knife.
The Observer, 3 days after Christmas, would write, Kevin Kay of Spike TV said right now they are looking at doing quarterly Monday Night Live specials, and if they draw well, they will move Impact permanently to Monday. Regarding the rating, TNA people are downplaying the importance of the first show rating. Even privately, TNA people are not expecting to do particularly well. Their hope is that the attention of doing the Monday night special and the publicity they've gotten will at least slightly build the Thursday number. And if they do a big number, at least for the first hour, that perhaps Monday would be viable. But the company does expect Bret Hart on January 4th, and that the 2 hours opposed will be very tough to draw a good number in, even with Hogan. To me, just based on the fact that the Thursday number, albeit against an NFL game, hurts, hasn't shown any real movement within the company, getting the publicity of Hogan involvement isn't a good sign. Still, they're buying ads on WWE programming in the top local markets based around Hogan. And in theory, the first time for Hogan should lead to at least 1 or 2 weeks of curiosity.
You folks just listen to audio. I wish I could have a little, update myself, a little Kodak moment. If I could have taken a picture of you, Conrad, when you just finished reading that sentence, your face said it all. So carry on, my friend.
The idea that we say, even privately, TNA people are not expecting to do particularly well. Buddy, if you don't believe, why the fuck should anybody else? And the idea that we're like, well, we're going to throw a bunch of money at it, not just calling in a favor for the Ultimate Fighter. Like, we didn't do that big. I mean, we didn't do that to sell a pay-per-view. We didn't do that to, it's just, I don't get it. Like, you used up a favor. Now you're going to spend a bunch of cash marketing it. You're going to try to buy ads in all the big markets, WWE programming, come out of pocket for that. Oh, by the way, you got to pay Hogan. And then we're acknowledging, well, this is probably not going to go well, but we hope that if we spend enough on our Monday show, that people will watch our regular Thursday show. We're not going to buy ads for our Thursday show and let people know that Hogan will be on the show that we know is going to be there. We're going to spend a bunch of time, effort, and energy and call in a favor and write our own checkbook, not for our regular slot. No. We're going to do it on this other day where we know it's not permanent. It's the fucking dumbest thing I've ever heard. And you had to be thinking that, like, wait a minute, we're not doing it Monday nights every week. No, but we're going to advertise, let's spend a lot of money promoting this one-off that we don't think is going to go very well. Why wouldn't we just run promos that say, watch Hulk Hogan this Thursday? Why wouldn't we do that on every Raw show? Wouldn't that make more sense, Jeff?
You've encapsulated my thinking during this time frame. Why? I go back to the compassion. If Bob only knew how his investment was being treated. And look, obviously I came back in 2015 Hall of Fame, and me and Dixie have had conversations many since then. But her experience of really driving a wrestling organization was non-existent. Put that on top of hiring the biggest box office attraction, and I say as a talent. But what's Hulk's experience in running a wrestling organization? Eric ran NWO. Eric ran WCW. Eric was in the corporate meetings. Eric. So Dixie and Hulk, you just sort of encapsulated it. And look, here's another thing. And obviously I had conversations with Diamond and Kevin Kay and Scott Fishman. Think about what they were thinking.
The thing that, and listen, you and I could both hold our right hand up and tell the truth and say, we love us some Eric Bischoff. But the difference between Eric Bischoff and yourself is when Eric was promoting wrestling, wasn't his money. And that is something that a lot of people don't talk about. But when people say negative things about Tony Khan, oh, Tony's this, oh, Tony's that. Tony's spending his own money. Vince McMahon's spending his own money.
Bingo.
Bischoff did not. That doesn't mean he didn't do a fantastic fucking job. We celebrate that every week on 83 weeks. But the idea that we're going to spend all this cash on something that we don't know in our heart. See, when you're spending other people's money, it's okay to try things. We're experimenting. This is how business works. We're learning. If it's your own money and you realize you have to go home and say, now, honey, I know you wanted to go to Harvard, but have you thought about a state school because you wanted to run an experiment? We don't do that. We make sure the profit is there first, and then we do all the other nonsense. And when we don't mind the money, we wind up, and I'm not saying this to dunk on anybody, like the Crockett's. And they had the golden goose, and they didn't mind the money, and then they didn't anymore.
Yep.
And that is not a story that's unique to wrestling. That's the way it works in every business. When a small business goes out of business, and by the way, that's really what your E-Myth book is about.
It is.
Why small businesses fail.
Yes, it's fantastic. But you did read it?
No, but I just bought it on Audible. No, I didn't buy it on Audible. They don't sponsor us. I bought it on Amazon. Anyway, what was Kevin Kelly like to deal with?
Kevin Kay.
Yeah, sorry, Kevin Kay.
On that note about whose money and all this, it jarred out. This isn't a sidebar because it was during this. Me and Karen got married August 2010. So right sort of during all of this era, all this,
yeah.
Me and coming back in. I wasn't the executive producer. I was talent. Going to the Doubletree bar. I don't think you ever went there. Maybe you did, but there was the bar, all this. And so there were different groups like anything and after hours and all that. But there was a table that, let's just say, was throwing some shade on old Double J. And Karen heard it, heard a little bit more, heard a little bit more. And you can probably imagine where this story's going, but you can't. But I was proud of her. She walked over said table and said, "Hey guys, I hear you loud and clear. And look, he didn't make all the right decisions and didn't make all the wrong decisions. But if you guys don't like what's going on here," because they were bashing a lot of different things. Nobody said you had to work here. And if you really want to do something, go take your own money and start your own wrestling organization, and walked off.
Because that's really what we're talking about. Like, these ideas and concepts, okay, we're working with budgets and we're earmarking money, but if it doesn't work, well, they can't cut my money and I'll just move on and do something else. But when it's your own money, it's a whole different ball of wax. And I think you and I are like-minded in that, because, hey, if I run a big promotion at the mortgage company and it don't work out, that affects my household. It's not like, well, I make the same either way. And I think a lot of times, there's a whole sidebar about that. We'll talk about another time. Let's talk about
Kevin K was your question. How was he to work with?
Yes.
Fantastic. And Kevin, I don't want to call him a lifer, but he worked his way up through Viacom. And
here's where I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
You can't call anybody, but people can call you.
Yes.
And by the way, that works in corporate America. When someone gets let go, someone asks for their release, someone leaves, someone quits, they usually sign some sort of separation agreement that says, hey, you can't recruit, especially if you're an executive like you were. Then it means that you can't call those people because it would look like you were tampering, and you open yourself up to a bunch of lawsuits. But people can call you. So when a guy leaves like this, and I know you're not technically gone, just follow me, humor me for a minute. People call and say, man, I heard you're not with us anymore. What the hell happened? Now you can talk because they called you. So I'm curious, you were having conversations with this guy. You were in a big part of everything that's going on, and now you're on the outside. I know you can't call him. Did Kevin K ever call you?
No. And here's why, because look, even after I left and Global Force and I met with Kevin K and Brian Diamond, he had gotten let go, and heck, we'd stayed in touch. And obviously Scott Fishman, who's still at Viacom, but those were the three contacts. Excuse me. But you asked, did Kevin call me? No, but he did have someone from the Spike team ask one of my closest confidants that I'll leave nameless. Hey, can you tell me a little bit about Jeff? And if you can't, give me some advice. Should I call him? And they said, don't call him. Okay.
So it said that the people TNA were negotiating with to debut on this same show are Rob Van Dam, Ken Kennedy, Ric Flair, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman.
Bubba the Love Sponge, Shawn Morley. I'm just kicking you. There's when we looked at the notes, how many debuts that go ahead. I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying you're not involved in any of that. You're just a talent. But are any of these guys calling you? Like, when I'm sure Hulk calls Rick, but you've been friendly with Rick.
Sure.
You're real good friends with Scott Hall and Sean Waltman. When they have these conversations, because let's not act like Ric Flair, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman specifically have all had rosy relationships with Eric Bischoff every day of their life.
Right.
They've all been fired by Eric before. Some of them have sued him. But now he's calling, or Hulk's calling and saying, yeah, me and Eric, or me and Easy E, or whatever he's saying. They gotta just hang up the damn phone and dial a 615 number. And there you are, riding on a jet ski. Well, I guess maybe not in December. What are you thinking? Wait a minute. I'm an owner. I get paid dividends. I participate out of profits. We're hiring all these guys at the same freaking time to debut on the same freaking show.
So what is your question to me, sir?
Do I have that right? Are they calling?
No.
What are you saying?
So and now that's why we're getting granular and I guess this is a part of the episode, but it is the story behind the story behind the story. By December-ish, we'll say, or no, I'll just say December-ish. There was a sort of an undercurrent that it was Jeff's. It's like I was erased from recent history. Don't ask, don't tell, don't talk about it. And there was a little undercurrent. Now I found that out obviously much later, but there was a sense of, if I'm going to get paid, I better be on Team Dixie, and we'll just that's how talent is. That's how it is.
But you kind of have fell into the same thing too, where you don't want to quote unquote go rogue and then be able to say that you were in breach and not pay you, because if it felt like you'd already been squeezed out, the last thing you wanted to do is find a way to get completely squeezed out of any cash, right?
Well, and then the ownership component, it's one thing to have a talent deal or an employment agreement but you get into the whole, I already knew the repercussions that I'd learned, we're in 2010. So I became minority into, early in the game as we've documented. There was no upside, and my attorney continued to tell me, what's the upside? What's the benefit? It's chatter. I'd talk to some of my confidants, Keith Mitchell being one of them, like, Jeff, what's the upside? I mean, what really is the upside to having any of these conversations? He's right. Keith is a wise owl.
Let me ask this, and we'll call it the last quarter of 2009. Were you, because you talked a little bit earlier about how in 2013, you almost had this thing locked down, or you thought you did, blah, blah, blah. So it became your business to know the numbers inside and out. Was TNA profitable in the last quarter of 2009?
Yes.
Were they kind of sort of profitable, or were they wildly profitable? I don't mean like WWE dividend, but I guess
sure profitable, because Hogan didn't come onto the payroll. All this new talent didn't come onto the payroll. We still ran live events. 2009, because you're talking the full calendar year. I thought you were going with a whole nother direction of the question. You're talking about dollars and cents of money of 2009. Wow. Okay. The most profitable year in the history of the company.
And we'll talk about this another time, but you're being paid multiple ways here. You're an on-screen performer, which is basically what you've been relegated to. And you do get an ownership piece. So, a disbursement, a dividend, whatever you want to call it.
And employment.
You're an employment base. Yeah. So you're paid based on the house, so to speak, because now you're an owner. So if the business is profitable, you participate. Again, not the lion's share, a minority share. We'll talk about all that another time. But the point is, you do not want to rock the boat and lose either of these pieces, but maybe most specifically, I guess that's what I'm trying to drive to. Your ownership income was more substantial than your entertainer contract.
Sure. I was paid three ways: an employee, talent, and ownership. Ownership was in 2009
the biggest of all,
and certainly had by far the biggest upside in future to come. Like, multiples.
Yeah, because realistically, wrestlers are going to get paid what wrestlers paid. Office people are going to get paid.
Trying to get out of the ring.
Yeah. And office folks get paid what office folks get paid. You're going to get paid a competitive wage and it'll be nice and blah, blah, blah. But it's not like crazy, holy shit, honey, we're getting a jet type of money, working in an office anywhere.
Correct.
So the other thing that pops up here, I guess there is a bright spot, although it doesn't end that way, is it's not just these guys who are fresh off WWE TV or maybe legends from the past, but it's also a little team that's going to be known as Generation Me, Nick and Matt Jackson, who we know as the Young Bucks now. They have a tryout match And as the legend goes, Bob Ryder was all about it and thought these guys were the future. And they're part of this new launch and debut on Monday night too, right?
Yes, Jen, me. Again, I wasn't in the firing process at all. So me speaking to anything in depth, it's just not there. But yes,
Russo and Hogan have
footnote of the timing of everything too.
Say again.
Just an interesting footnote. The Bucks came in at this time during the Hogan regime, but we had the Nasty Boys and others. I'll say, I just think it's an interesting note here.
Let's also talk about, the more things change, the more they stay the same. We're going to work the boys, brother. Russo and Hogan are talking publicly like they're not on the same page. And the Observer says that's a complete work. They've been working together since October. Let's talk about the day. Is this show the first time you attend a show and Hogan and Bischoff are there?
Yes. To my recollection, yes. And on that note about Hogan, and I don't have any recall of that. And that's, that maybe that'll come down the line, but about them not getting along publicly, but working together privately. Yeah, of course they were working together privately, but I don't remember there being really any dissension publicly between the two, but anyway,
but here's the thing though. I mean, candidly, I'm sure there's times where you're it hasn't happened yet, but eventually, and maybe we did today and don't know it, you're going to say something on here that's going to be a little shot across the bow to Eric Bischoff. And then Eric's going to go on his show and he's going to give another little shot across the bow from his way. But if Eric and I find ourselves in Nashville, we're going to ring you up and we're going to go eat a steak and we're going to give each other a hug when we're done. So that's just part of wrestling, right?
Yeah. That and podcasting. I've told you this, my I'll say fear, but is that my recall is inaccurate. And I'm going to sit here and just for sure go, that's exactly what's happened. That was exactly what's said. And then all of a sudden I'm going to have a Prevagen moment and go, wait a minute. No, that was on a whole different item and subject. And that was a year later, but that's the world of podcasting I've headed into.
It's not unlike the whole plane ride from hell conversation that dominated wrestling last week. People were saying Vince and Linda were on the plane. They weren't. Other people were saying this is the plane ride where Michael Hayes tried to pee on Linda. She wasn't even there. Others were saying, well, they left out the Kurt Angle, Vince McMahon wrestling story, different flight. There's lots of different flights, but now because there's so many hijinks, people just squish them together. Well, I can only imagine, we're talking about something that, as you and I are talking, happened nearly 12 years ago. So it's not a wonder if you don't remember everything. And by the way, not a knock, but a little bit of time in between there, you maybe had too many drinks every now and again. So
stop it.
Things could be a little fuzzy every now and again.
See how you are trying to get me off the rails. That's completely
that was unfair.
Rumor and innuendo. I'm kidding. By the grace of God, I'm alive. But yes, you can say that. Well, hell, you've just documented this. No wonder I drank, Conrad. Is it,
buddy? And I was thinking the whole time I didn't want to say that, but about 3 times during this, I was like, I'm sure Jeff was pouring something with Dr. Pepper around this time, saying whatever. See you later. It's an interesting.
I talk about it now. Everybody knows I take my sobriety serious, but as a part of that series, I have to look back and go, whew, I survived.
Yeah. By the way, you take, I don't know how much of this you want to share, but you take it so seriously that you and I have certain times of the day we can't record because that's a priority, and that comes before this. So I know you take it seriously.
Yeah.
So I don't want anybody that listening to this think I'm trying to, you know what I mean, but it's number 1, and I'm totally in support of that. It's an interesting note too, that before the show on the UFC programming, it's announced that Jeff Hardy is going to appear on the show. Now, don't get me wrong. Hulk Hogan's the biggest star of them all, in wrestling history. And we know Nick and Matt Jackson are going to become the Young Bucks, but they're not quite there yet. Ric Flair is obviously the greatest wrestler of all time. Everybody was saying that back then, and they're still saying it. Well, recently they were saying it. And Rob Van Dam, my God, once upon a time was the flag bearer for ECW. But very, very, very recently, Jeff Hardy was the biggest name in WWE. I mean, the hottest thing they had. And now he's here too. But in typical snake bit fashion, the show opens with something. And again, I mentioned I was not watching wrestling at the time, but when I saw Hulk Hogan promote this show, I said, well, shit, I got to check it out. And what I saw was unbelievable. The show opens with an 8-man X Division match in a domed cage.
Steel Asylum.
Between Homicide, I'm going to screw that name up, Kiyoshi, Jay Lethal, Consequences Creed, who, by the way, is Xavier Woods of New Day. He was here too. Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin, Suicide, and the Amazing Red. The winner must climb out of the domed cage, which sounds impossible because it fucking is. The cage is hard to shoot through from a camera perspective. So it's not the easiest thing to watch on our debut first segment of the biggest show and most important show in TNA history. And then Homicide climbs up and gets stuck. He can't figure out how to get out. It's impossible. It can't be done. He's up there for what feels like an eternity. It's 78 seconds, but as you're watching, you're used to imagine now, if someone's climbing a ladder in WWE, if they got to maybe the next to last rung and just had to freeze for 78 seconds, if we ran a timer right now, that's not a bad idea. Here's how long Homicide was stuck at the top of the cage.
You may talk through any of this?
Hey, be quiet.
Oh, we got 78 seconds. I wish we had a little Jeopardy theme.
Chris will add that.
Okay. We have to. You really aggravated me today. We're not even 30 seconds into this debacle. And it was the Steel Asylum disaster.
Hey, you're going to be quieter. I'm going to mute you.
Don't chastise me. Don't freaking chastise me. Dadgummit. We're at 45 seconds for you audio listeners. I hope we're dead, but you know.
Hey, pipe down, Andersonville.
God almighty. Geico or Blue Chew or shh. Stop. Trains can't.
You better stop. We're not done.
Oh my gosh. This
already fell. He fell.
This is painful.
He fell. This is a live show. He falls down, hits everyone with a baton, and the match is ruled a no contest. The crowd starts chanting, "This is bullshit."
Yep. I remember.
It's hard to disagree. And then out of nowhere, Jeff Hardy comes from the crowd with entrance music, mind you, and crushes Homicide with a chair shot to the head.
Conrad?
Lot to unpack here, Jeff.
Conrad, will you get your notes and be prepared to give me the 8 participants again? Because I said it that night afterwards, and I said it as this story sort of behind closed doors took a whole nother meaning into itself, because it was, guys, this is a perfect example. So Dixie and Hulk and everybody that was a part of this debacle, everybody looked at that and said, okay, here's the Steel Asylum. Okay, let's talk about this. Out of the 8 guys who might not have the best upper body strength. And as a producer, I can assure you, I saw this structure in Mexico. I loved it. I think there's a lot of good storytelling. It was a massive Greg Horn and production and the look of it and the storylines, but it was one of those political things. Oh, this and that. You got to have the right guys in the match, just like in Mexico. You got to have the right guys in the match. But why wouldn't you pick Lethal to do this spot? Oh no, homicide. Why wouldn't you pick Chris Sabin? Oh no, he doesn't fit. Homicide would be out of the 8 probably the worst, and it played out that way. But it was such a microcosm of the current leadership. They didn't know the product, they didn't know the structure, and they didn't know the talent in the ring. Period.
Had you seen this domed cage before?
Look, I'm the one who was a part of bringing it. It was at Bound for Glory in Chicago. I'm trying to think. So the structure.
It's not the first time using it. It's just the first time it's been here on Monday night.
Yes.
And it has successfully been done before, but you can't tell if you're a first time viewer of this product, because I had not seen the cage before this. This was my first time seeing it.
Okay. Those 8 that you just saw.
Yeah. Homicide, Kiyoshi, Jay Lethal, Consequences Creed, Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin, Suicide, and Amazing Red.
I don't know who Suicide was, but Creed in fantastic shape.
Yeah.
Suicide, whether it was Daniels or Kazarian, both fantastic shape. About anybody but Homicide. They picked Homicide to go up.
And by the way, that's not a slight against Homicide. It just wasn't his style.
I mean, ask people to cut a promo like Homicide or do. Yes. I mean, it's just skill set. I'm not. Hell no. I love Homicide. I mean, no. It's not. No disrespect to him. It's strengths and weaknesses.
But you don't speak up and say anything when you know. Or did you know the finish? Are you privy?
That's what I'm saying. I watched. I watched it. So
you're in the back watching on a monitor?
I cannot say that I was sitting there watching this move by move. I heard it all after the fact, and I went back and watched it in horror. No, it was just like, oh my God.
Listen, I'm never, most of the people, a lot of the boys listen to this, so maybe they have, but most of the people listening to this have never been on live TV with hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of people watching. They've never been in front of a sold out arena, no matter how big or small. They've probably never been in their underwear in front of that many people, much less be giving a performance. And now it's gone really poorly.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine, watching it had what my daughter taught me is called secondhand embarrassment. I'm not there, but I feel bad for them.
Yes.
And I can't imagine what it feels like to be there. It's our big night. It's Monday night debut. Hulk Hogan's here and Jeff Hardy's here and blah, blah, blah. And this is it. This is our big break. And then I'm in the biggest debacle that this company's ever seen in front of the most people that have ever seen it. And I can't do anything about it.
On Monday, right out of the gate. And I can tell you from experience that at about between 45 and 60 seconds, you sort of have that adrenaline rush and go, oh my God. Oh, and you do have okay, I've got to get this done. I mean, I'm about to be embarrassed, and you just sort of like something like, whew, thank God that didn't happen.
I imagine when the guys come back through the curtain, they wanted to put their shit in a bag and leave as soon as possible.
I would imagine Homicide wasn't feeling real good. And the other guys were probably super frustrated. And if Daniels or Kazarian were in there, probably Jay Lethal. And look, I don't want to leave names out, but I'm sure there was a couple of guys that probably thought to themselves, damn it, why didn't I speak up earlier in the day? Damn it, why didn't we rehearse this the right way? I mean, lots of second guessing.
And to be clear, I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask, well, why didn't they rehearse it? Because what if something goes wrong, right? A lot of guys in wrestling say, I've actually seen There was a big stunt, not a huge stunt, but there was a stunt done in wrestling in the last few years. And I was there like Forrest Gump should be, just randomly where he doesn't belong. And the person said, yeah, I got a bad knee, but tonight I'm doing so and so. And I looked as if to say, is that a good idea? But I didn't say that because what the fuck? I do mortgages, not my place. And he saw the look on my face and he said, I figure I don't want to do a run through or a walk through or rehearse it, because if I get hurt, at least it happened on TV and there's a reason why I'm off the show. Knowing good chance I don't pull this off and I'm going to get hurt and be on the shelf, but this is what they want me to do. But I at least want to protect my spot and have a storyline reason to come back. And I'm going to go do it anyway tonight with no practice.
I love your storytelling,
because Homicide here, legitimately, if they would have done a walkthrough and they're trying this and he can't do it and he falls and hurts himself, now he's out of the match. Now he's off the show. Or what if he did it, but now he's so tired from doing it and sore that he can't go do it again because he did it earlier. That would almost be worse to be like, oh, I did it in practice, but I couldn't do it here. So instead, we show our ass in front of the whole world in our debut segment.
Whose fault is it when a guy gets hurt in preseason football? A lot of times the coach.
The coach takes the heat.
Yeah, why the hell did you have him in there? So as a producer, that's what I'm saying. Looking at that and saying, hey, I understand from a creative perspective, we sort of want to go with Homicide coming out of the gate, but if we're going to go with Homicide, we probably shouldn't have this Steel Asylum. But if we want the Steel Asylum to start with the big spectacle, it's Monday nights, let's go with Lethal, because he's done this. He actually did this in a match on a pay-per-view.
I know you weren't there, but do you assume the person who wrote this was Vince Russo?
Yes.
Again, that's an assumption. We didn't say
I was there that night, but I was not in the room.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So Meltzer also reports that Jeff Hardy had not signed a deal at that point, and that's the reason it was a last minute mention on the UFC thing. Was this simply a one-off appearance deal? I know you weren't necessarily handling all that, but you're real life friends with Mr. Hardy. I assume it come up at some point.
Me and Nero were buddies. I tried to obviously deliberately sort of, stay out of that, but getting wind of that. But it was for the podcast, for our My World buddies, I think this is a really good example to shine a light on the sense of urgency of, we are throwing the kitchen sink and we want an entirely new roster, as much as possible. And with as many stars as we can pull out. That was how I took it.
Next up, we go backstage and Hulk Hogan makes his first appearance. It's backstage. It shows he's there and Kevin Nash is talking about Hulk Hogan has mentored him. Boy, this is the Hulk Hogan show here. Then ODB would beat Tara in 3 minutes and 30 seconds to become Knockouts champion. Let's sidebar here for a minute. Are you surprised ODB never got a chance to go work for WWE, or did she? And I missed it.
To my knowledge, no. And, Jess and Karen are good friends. And I'm great friends with ODB. I've been a huge ODB supporter. You can look at my creative track record. Jess, ODB, loves Cody. So personally, the Jarrett household is huge fans. But from a professional talent, she is such a unique talent. She can talk, she can work, but she's got a unique box office attraction, but she didn't fit the diva.
Yeah.
So, I think it's literally that simple.
Which is really a shame because they've opened it up and they have in recent years, but like it was wrong time and wrong place. And I guess anybody who's had any success knows that timing is everything. But my goodness, what a performer she was, what a persona she was, what a character she was. But because she didn't fit in that little WWE box of here's exactly what we want, which is a pretty narrow focus at the time.
Yes.
For men and women. I mean, this is the era where they were cranking out male wrestlers who looked like clones, like they were just made in a factory. Women sort of the same way. Excuse me. But that is what made TNA great, right? They were different then. And ODB is a great example.
You in live events, and you look at the diversity of the knockouts, the beautiful people. I mean, we literally had something for everyone, but unique, different characters. But the yin and the yang, and I've already mentioned them, but the yin and the yang of the beautiful people in ODB is box office.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple to tell stories when you have the diversity that we had. And yeah, as you can tell, huge fan of ODB, and just wasn't meant to be, I guess, with the WWE. But I tell you what, very successful over the years. I mean, I just get tickled thinking about her and Eric Young and the bikini contest. And
a lot of great moments.
Yeah. Anyway,
Rick is shown on TV, Ric Flair. He's another arrival. It's reported in the Observer regarding his deal. Quote, Flair signed his deal a few days before the show. His deal was for 65 appearances over 1 year. It's believed he was working on a guaranteed money deal. Plus he would be able to book his own outside appearances, whether they be public appearances for various companies he works for or outside business deals. He debuted getting out of a limo and shook hands with several wrestlers and went to AJ Styles' dressing room. Is this the first time you had seen Rick since the last Nitro?
Oh, well, gosh, that's a good question since the last Nitro, but it had certainly been a while. That's a good question if I had seen him before that. But man, reviewing the notes brought me back to this time, and just thinking of, if I remember, did you just say Hogan premiered on this episode in a backstage vignette?
Yeah, man.
And so did Rick.
Yeah, man.
Arguably, well, not arguably, they are the two biggest box office attractions in so many different ways. Yes, Austin for his time frame, and Rock, but in 2010, Cena was, we'll call it halfway into his run, or 6-8 years into his run, but still Hogan and Flair debuted in backstage segments. I mean, that's a fact. Think about that.
He goes to the AJ Styles dressing room. Did you hear that creative before it happened?
No.
What'd you think of that?
Are you talking about where they were going to go with it and the robe and all that down the line, or just tonight?
We'll get into all that, but I'm just saying, for him to go to AJ's, it feels like, oh, well, they're going to do something. And we know what it became.
No, again, I was no part of creating the show, writing the show, producing the show. I was just a talent.
I'm not trying to beat you up here. I'm just saying you showed up in the back, and it's got to be a little awkward for everybody who has been hired by you and coached by you and worked with you this entire time. And I don't know what your relationship was like with AJ, but I assume AJ was like, hey, this guy helped give me my big break and believed in me and gave me an opportunity and blah, blah, blah. And now you're in the back and nobody's talking to you.
I don't think this would be betraying AJ's trust, but obviously you just sort of laid it out. AJ and many others, catering, hey, how's it going? Shaking hands. But it would come to a point with lots of folks that the opportune time, Jeff, what the F is going on?
Yeah.
And AJ, for sure.
He didn't say what the F though. He didn't curse.
No, he did not. He was very polite, but and there were so many of those. Mike and Don, Mike and I'll start saying names that I shouldn't, but Tenay was one of them.
So Flair and Hogan here, two of the biggest stars in the history of professional wrestling, are now in a company you founded. Now, it's not going exactly the way you hoped personally, but is there any sense of pride where you're like, holy shit, this is pretty cool? Flair and Hogan are a part of this thing that me and Bob Ryder and my dad came up with on a boat trip.
My delusional optimism, because I always knew that, look, no matter how good or bad Saturday morning TV was in Memphis, you had to come back the following week and do it. And you had to come back the following week and do it. And you had to come back the next week after that. And I truly thought at this time, okay, the hard work's going to start in a month or two. We're going to roll up our sleeves. Cooler heads will prevail. And we'll see where it goes. So I was taking it one show at a time. But yes, the founder blood in me with Hogan and Flair getting on board. Even on a Monday night, I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. So yes, I was very excited because again, coming off of 2009, financially, ratings wise, momentum wise, I'm like, okay, we can keep this thing going, and not keep it going. We can strategically keep growing. I'll say that.
So Mick Foley isn't allowed in by security. And then Crystal Lashley.
Yeah. Mick Foley, another name. I mean, you glossed over. Think about that. It's crazy. Go ahead, Conrad. Sorry to interrupt.
No, let's just time out right there. You and I have talked off air about, and even on air, as a matter of fact, we did get to this, but I asked you once, hey man, why didn't you just come over when everybody else did for the whole invasion angle in 2001? Now for one, there was the whole issue of, you not really being invited to, but we've explained from other guys' standpoint that you understood, hell, I get why so-and-so didn't go because, and I'm paraphrasing and you don't use the nasty language like I do. If you got 30 other motherfuckers debuting at the same time, how can I stand out? I'm signing up to get lost in the shuffle. These debuts, these moments need to matter. Would you rather have one big show where you have 17 different debuts and now we got to find a way to work them all into our storylines in the coming weeks and all of our existing talent we had before that we had brand equity built up in? Or would it make sense to let our usual cast of characters shine and let's have one big debut now and then maybe another next week or a month from now or 6 weeks from now or what have you? But instead it's, well, we're getting 42 new debuts tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a term for that in wrestling?
Hot shotting, just vision.
In real life, it's called flushing cash down the toilet.
Correct.
You got to have these big moments. And now if I am a new viewer of this show and I see all these surprises on night one, and then I tune in on Thursday and it's just Jay Lethal wrestling Consequences Creed, not disparaging those guys, love them. I'm like, wait a minute. Aren't there supposed to be 17 new surprises? Cause that's what I'm conditioned to. None of it makes sense.
No. And that it's, we're in a lot of ways laughing and cutting up and going through this and discussing it, but it was, again, really disheartening, to sort of go through it then and even to relive it, because what could have been.
Oh, it's unbelievable when you think about it.
And knowing Kevin K signed up, okay, we got Hulk. Wow. But then all of a sudden, he's a television guy. Kevin's not a wrestler, but he's a television guy. So they understand, lead actor, supporting actor. But when you have, like you said, 15, 17 debuts or however many it was, TV folks, it doesn't jive with them. It just, and Vince and Dixie, and I'll say Hulk. I mean, you talk about just swinging for the fences. It was just very disheartening because nothing meant nothing, including Hulk. Like Hulk was really creatively writing against himself.
Crystal Ashley's out. Meltzer would write, Crystal Ashley's role as the wife who speaks for her husband, controls him as he's quiet, looks down on pro wrestling and says MMA is better, took shape. She said that Bobby quit. Then the beautiful people play strip poker, which is going to lead to Sean Morley showing up later on in the show. Yes, the former Val Venus. Because, hey, by the way, strip poker here. Any guess on whose idea that was?
Oh, I'll give you
three. That was Dutch Mantell's, wasn't it?
Dutch wasn't around for this, pal.
I don't know. Scott Hall and Sean Waltman also can't get into the show. Not a lot of wrestling on this show. Top of the hour, which means it's right as Raw starts, and here comes Hulk Hogan for his TNA debut.
And you just skipped over Scott Hall and Sean Waltman. Think about their position in the industry in the late 90s.
Foley can't come in. Scott Hall, the guy who started the Monday Night War, can't come in. Sean Waltman can't come in. But now we've got Hulk Hogan's debut. Let's take a listen to his promo.
We are all witness to history being made at this very moment, and it's freaking cool, man. What's up, TNA Maniacs? You guys, TNA and the Maniacs, we are making history tonight, right here in TNA's ring. There is so much talent in the back, so many young guys that are running so hard. And yes, guys, there's a lot of old faces in the back that are ready to gear up. TNA is going to be the #1 company in the world. As I spent all day long dealing with the talent in the back, as I spent all day long hearing everybody's ideas, when I walked out here, brothers, this is the dream that I've been praying for. To feel the power of TNA, to feel the energy out here. There are so many new TNA faces out here, and there's a lot of familiar faces out here. All I gotta say is with TNA and the power of the Maniacs, this company will not be stopped. Hey, security! Security!
Hold on.
Security, hold on. Back off. Those guys got something to say. Somebody give them a mic. Bring them in the ring. Hey, yo. Guys, you know I'm all about the party.
Oh, yeah.
But
That's
you know
why we're
something?
here.
If you got something to say it right now.
Say hello to the bad guy. Now, when me and Park heard that Eazy-E was here, that Hulk Hogan was going to be here, and Big Kevin Nash has been here, that means one thing to us: big paychecks, big sold-out arenas, and big parties.
Let me tell you something, Scott. This is a different time, and this is a different place. It doesn't work that way anymore, brother. Hey, you see, that's where you're wrong. It is the same place. It's the same people, and we're here to party. Guys, not this time. It's going to be totally different this time.
Let me get this right, Hulkster. You're the biggest name in our industry, the highest paid guy ever, and now you're telling me you want to change the business? You want to change the way things are happening? Well, in case you haven't heard, things are changing at TNA.
No, wait a minute.
No, Big Daddy.
No, you wait a minute. It's time. It's time that we all grow up and we do the right thing for this business, brother. The right thing for the business.
Hey. You're right. He deserves every one of your chants. I grew up watching you wrestle, brother. You paved the way. You're the one who allowed me to make millions of dollars. And you're telling me things have changed? You're right. They've changed. And brother, they're going to change with you or without you.
Pretty strong statements by Scott Hall, huh?
For months, Kevin Nash has told us that he was in communication with Hulk Hogan. Taz, think of the history that Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman all have with Hulk Hogan.
It's a storied history, huge history in that very ring at this very moment.
Scott, kid, really, listen. Hulk's got a role to play tonight, all right? Let him play it.
No, Kevin, this isn't a role, brother. When I became partners with Dixie, I gave her my word. We were going to do the right thing. We were going to make a change and change this company for the better. It's not the way it was.
Well, you know, I've been talking to her for 5-6 weeks on the phone now, and that's not exactly the conversation we've been having. I'm just curious. When the hell did you turn so corporate?
You know something, Big Kev? It's not about turning corporate. Oh, no, yeah. You guys are my brothers for life. But you guys need to do this for real. It's a different time.
Oh boy, that's our Bischoff.
So Eric's making his way to the ring. Just want to remind everybody, Bret Hart just walked out on Raw.
Who has been embroiled in controversy his whole life. When you think of his motto in his book, controversy creates cash.
Hey, it's been a while, hasn't it? Brings back memories, doesn't it? I mean, look around you in this ring right now are the guys that reinvented this business. We took on the 800-pound gorilla and we put him in a little monkey cage and we spanked him. And in the process, In the process, we changed this business forever. One thing, guys, hopefully we're all just a little smarter. Now, I was the one that put this band together in the first place, all right? Got a little experience here. But one thing I learned, and I've got the scar tissue to prove it, is that it's all about communication, guys, all right? And I think there's been a serious, serious breakdown of communication, all right?
Well, then please, Eric, explain it to us.
I will. See, here's the deal. What Hulkster's trying to tell you is everybody has got to earn their position in this company. Everybody.
Easy. Hear you loud and clear. Talk to you later.
Like we said, at TNA, everybody has to earn their spot here. I don't care about the past relationships. I don't care who thinks they're on a roll. The game changes now. Everybody has to earn their spot in this company.
And it's going to change. The team of Hogan and Bischoff have done it before, and I'm damn well sure we can do it in TNA because there's a whole lot of talent, great talent in the back, and there's a whole lot of heart in this company, and we're going to take it to the very top. But I can assure you, things are going to change. I don't care if you're the damn janitor. I don't care if you're the world heavyweight champion. I don't care if you're the cameraman. Everybody is going to be under a microscope.
And the change starts tonight. From the moment we got here, we started shuffling the deck. Things aren't going to change until we conquer, become the #1 sports entertainment company in the world. And the change will keep on going until we're on top of the mountain.
I love it. In fact, if we're going to make some changes, why don't we start right now? Where's the producer? Who's got a format for me? Somebody's got a format.
Where's the producer?
Where is he? Come on, I want to see a format. Somebody give me a format. All right. This is what we thought, or I should say, you thought you were going to do tonight. We had a chance to look this over a little earlier. And hey, there's nothing wrong with this at all. I mean, you get an A for effort. But like the Hulkster says, we're starting over. That's what you thought you were going to do. Here, little lady, pass that on to your director, because that is what we're going to do. And what we're going to do is turn this company upside down, starting, I don't know, right now.
Well, you know something? For every TNA maniac in this building, if you can't talk and you can't wrestle, pack your bags and head up north, because right now we're checking everybody out. And by the way, what you gonna do when TNA and all these maniacs become #1 in the world just for you?
Wow. Hulk Hogan wasn't kidding when he said that it's time for a change in TNA. And it sounds to me like that change is happening now.
Mike, Sting! That's Sting up in the rafters! Haven't seen it for months!
Jeff?
That's a long ring.
That's how we decided we wanted to go head to head with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart in the same ring for the first time since the Montreal screw job. They were in Dayton, Ohio at the Nutter Center, and Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels buried the hatchet. Meanwhile, Sean Waltman and Scott Hall jumped the rail and tried to take over the show. And Bischoff came out and Nash came out and Sting's in the rafters. But most importantly, if you were a loyal TNA fan, and man, you've been with us since the beginning. You used to buy the Wednesday pay-per-views. Maybe you even drove to the Asylum. You've come down to Orlando. You were excited for the debut on FS1 and we're finally on cable. And then they got a primetime spot. They got Kurt Angle and they got Sting. And hey, we appreciate you guys watching, but that shit sucked because we're not doing that anymore. Now everything's different. We don't care about you. We want the people who aren't watching this show last week. So you can just take your viewership up north. It read like we don't give a shit about any of the existing TNA fans to me. You disagree?
Not at all. But it is exactly what Dixie wanted. And I'm not trying to rain on her at all.
Did Dixie feel, listen, you have always understood based on our conversations, we ain't going to beat Vince McMahon. That can't happen. We don't have the experience. We don't have the resources, et cetera, et cetera. We can't be better than. We can be different than. And this feels like an absolute departure. I just can't wrap my head around it. Then it goes way inside. Hey, this was what we were doing. This was our script, because everybody knows wrestling's just bullshit. But now this is what we're doing. Did Dixie feel that you guys had the inferior product? I mean, let's compare this to a franchise, right? So we'll pretend we're the NFL. Okay. Did she feel like the Jaguars?
Look, obviously you'd have to ask her, but just hearing that back, and look, hindsight is 2020.
Sure.
But bringing out the format felt like Vince Russo.
Yeah, of course.
Talking about everything changes without question tonight feels like Dixie Carter. And we're going to be number one. And a whole bunch of, Hulk was playing the cheerleader and I'm running the show and I'm going to be making the decisions and I'm partners with Dixie Carter. That felt like that. That's what I heard. And just because he's our partner, but if you really listen to Eric with a trained ear,
yeah,
he was making wrestling logic out of a mess.
He was trying his best.
I'm telling you, just because he's our 83 weeks partner. And I can say that through this 2010, 11, 12, 13, how our relationship started wasn't bad, just almost non-communication, but getting to the point where he comes out to the house and I'm grilling him steaks and having a few cocktails with him during those days. But when you hear this promo, he tried to make wrestling logic. But when you hear I'm going to wipe the the slate clean, that I can remember resonating. And I had a conversation with Dean and Andy, like, hey, Jeff, I'm going to walk in your office, shut the door behind you. And can you sort of tell me what your really thoughts are? And I can remember telling them. They told our viewers, hey, man, you guys, there's been a lot of problems. It was been a complete mess, but we're going to change all that now. And I said, writing a story, it's a disconnect. It's a complete disconnect. I don't know. I get that they want to do the reset and it's their ball of wax, but storytelling was off base. That's diplomatic as I can be.
All right, guys, let's run a timeout right now to talk about what Jeff Jarrett has called a life hack, a cheat code. I'm talking about Lumen. It's the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs. And then it gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, and even stress management. All you got to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, meaning whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after your workouts and even your meals, so you know what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen is here to give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. And here's why your metabolic health really matters. Think of your metabolism as like your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is literally at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a whole host of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health with each breath. And the recommendations from Lumen are designed to help you improve your pre- and post-workout fueling for better performance and better recovery, so you can power through your toughest workouts and really add on muscle mass. So if you're ready to take the next step in improving your health, go right now to lumen.me/myworld and you'll get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/myworld for 15% off your purchase. And we thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring today's episode. Were you watching this on the monitor in the back?
Yes.
When this is going down, describe your emotions as you're watching it. Like,
hearing it back, so I can't really get back in my brain, but just because you're a main event talent doesn't mean that you can produce yourselves. This is hitting the mark because we've told people for the last 3 or 4 years that Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe and AJ Styles, Team 3D,
they're the best in the world.
All that, and now they've got to earn their keep. And I'm not talking about the heels, but the baby faces, and it all starts over. And we're hearing this from, oh man, I am a Scott Hall fan, but Scott, why are you raining on the TNA talent? Or I'm not saying he did that, but Hulk, and it just.
Hulk said, if you can't wrestle and you can't talk.
Yeah. Of all people. I'll say this, that promo did not age well over the next few years.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. And it makes me feel like instead of having, like, when you're in last place, and don't get me wrong, TNA was not in last place. And even if they were, let's break that down. Who gives a shit?
We were the alternative making money.
Thank you. Making money is what it is. Nobody should have ever started a wrestling company or any business. Like, let's say Jeff wants to open a hamburger stand. Is he going to be hell bent on beating McDonald's? Or is he going to be hell bent on, let me provide for my family the best living I can?
And sell a lot of freaking hamburgers.
Make as much money as I can at my hamburger stand.
Yes.
Not necessarily become all consumed with, we got to have something better than the Happy Meal. What? They got too big of a lead on you, Bubba. You'll never catch them. That's not why you should be doing this anyway.
Yes.
Unless you got more money than you know what to do with, and it ain't really your money anyway.
Yeah.
But when you approach this from a pragmatic business approach, everything that just happened is wrong. Hello, paying customers who gave us a super profitable, wildly profitable year last year. We don't care about you. It's unbelievable.
It will believe that because you just heard it. I mean, that's exactly. Oh boy. I told you this, my world was going to be painful at times.
This is one of those times.
Painful.
But it is what could have been. I mean, Up next is the TNA Knockouts tag title match. By the way, we should mention this. This is Hulk Hogan was doing what was scripted. As you said, Eric Bischoff was trying to make chicken salad. Sean Waltman, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash were doing what was scripted. These guys are performers. I'm not going to put any of this blame on them. In the end, they're all employees. They're all doing what they were told.
100%.
So I don't want anyone to hear this and say, boy, Jeff and Conrad really just shit on Kevin Nash. No, we didn't. We love Kevin. We love Scott.
Been a part of Main Event Mafia. Kevin knew.
Yes. Hey, it's working. Why are we deviating?
I'm telling you, Kevin knew like no tomorrow. I'll just leave it at that.
The idea, though, that somebody gets into the wrestling business, don't get me wrong. Everybody wants to be champ. Everybody wants to get a push. Everybody wants to have the #1 selling t-shirt or action figure or whatever. I get that. But listen, most of us who are listening to this are not in the wrestling business. Why do you go to work every day? To take care of your family. Well, what are your goals? Sure, you'd like to get a promotion, but why? Well, because you'd like to give your family a better house, a bigger house, a vacation house. They don't have to worry about student loans. You're in this to make money. Mm-hmm. This is the wrestling business. When you become obsessed with, we're going to become if you could become the #1 wrestling promotion in the world based on top line revenue, Jeff, or you could become the most profitable wrestling promoter based on bottom line revenue, Jeff, what would you pick? There's a famous Jay-Z lyric. Would you rather be overrated or overpaid or underrated? I'll take overpaid.
There you go.
I'll take overpaid all day. Underrated's not a compliment. I mean, it is, but
2013 December, my attorney calls me and says, well, what do you think? I said, I'm resigning at the end of the month. And, you know, I'm paraphrasing a lot. What do you think about the last year? Just give me your thoughts. I said, I learned something this year. Goal alignment.
Yeah.
Yep. Jeff, you're right. Your goal is to make money. The Carter's goal was not. And this is the proof in the pudding right here. And
don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that, by God.
Oh,
it's their money.
It's their money and their decision. Yes.
They can do totally what they want. But Jeff Jarrett's goal was, as with most wrestling promoters before him, I want to make as much money as I can, because that's why you get into business. Yes. That's why you stress out and you employ people and you do all of this to hopefully at the end squeeze out more of a profit than you could somewhere else. But when money's not an issue
of this episode with the advertising, just think about that.
Yeah.
Because it was live on Monday with 15 new debuts.
It was astronomical. You lost your ass on this show.
Yes.
Your dad was outside trying to figure out how to put something else in them cigars, because that tobacco wasn't enough. That's inside baseball. Up next is the TNA Knockouts tag match between Sarita and Taylor Wilde against Awesome Kong and Hamada. It's important to note that when this segment started compared to when it ended, 880,000 viewers changed the channel. So we had all this momentum, good or bad, right or wrong. And when this match started, by the time it was done, 880,000 people had changed the channel. Now, I don't know what the lesson is there. And by the way, I'm not going to necessarily blame that on any of the talent either. To me, on a night like this match should not have been here. We've had so much backstage horseshit. Hulk Hogan debuted in the back. Ric Flair debuted in the back. We just had that long ass section. And by the way, we clipped out all the Hogan, like when he walked through and they're hyping it up and all that, we clipped all that out. But that segment was 20 minutes by itself. The only wrestling we've seen so far is 8 guys trying to escape a cage and they can't. And there's 78 seconds of silence. Then a women's match
for 3 minutes,
then strip poker. Then this segment with the big interview, and now the tag title match for the ladies. This is not what TNA was based on. Like, where's AJ Styles flipping around doing his thing? Where's Samoa Joe? Where's Kurt Angle? What about we got scantily clad women playing strip poker, and 880,000 people left during this match, which wasn't strip poker, but still. They left. Now, only 117,000 viewers switched to Raw. So it's not like 880,000 left and went to the other channel like they did back in the day with Foley and Butts and Seats. They just said, oh, okay. Total nonstop talking. I'm good. Oh, wait, there is wrestling. I'll stay tuned. Oh, it's people I don't know. I'm not dunking on the women here. I'm just saying, you just signed all these people. Why not put, if this really is what it is, we got to get some mileage out of them. Let's use them, but we didn't. Then Sharon Morley comes out for strip poker, as mentioned before. Then we go to the back and we see that Foley still can't get in, but now he's joined by the Nasty Boys, because of course. And then Matt Morgan and Hernandez are going to defeat Raven and Dr. Stevie in 30 seconds. 30 seconds. And then the Pope is interrupted by Orlando Jordan. So yet another debut. We're going to transition to Pope versus Desmond Wolfe, which is Nigel McGuinness, in case you aren't familiar with the name. Pope wins in 3 minutes clean. By the way, Nigel, not too long ago, was one of the best wrestlers in the world in Ring of Honor, and everybody knew it. Loses in 3 minutes.
Just came off a good run this fall in 2009.
Then Rhino is attacked by a mystery person. And then we see Jeff Jarrett walking around. Eric Bischoff is going to show his power by telling AJ Styles he's not wrestling Kurt Angle at the pay-per-view, but now instead we'll face him in the main event. You come out for your promo. The gist of it is that homegrown TNA talent should be spotlighted. And then Hogan interrupts you, of course, and points out that you drove the company into the ground until Dixie saved it. When did you find out your creative was to come out here and let Hulk Hogan dunk on you, talk about how Dixie saved your ass?
That day.
Your thoughts?
It's, I said it earlier, boy, this didn't age so well. When you really think about what went down and how you put it with, oh my gosh, all the debuts. And again, I was a babyface the last time they had seen me in July of 2009. It was the main event Mafia, but me and Mick were trying to hold this ship together, but we had AJ and Eric Young and Samoa Joe and all the new blood over here. But there was a very much reality-based storyline that went going on. I went away and I come back. And so I was, for the lack of a better word, still a babyface, but you're going to come have Hulk, your premiering icon babyface, dog me. And I just said, okay, you got it, Vince. This is what we're doing. Yep. No problem.
So Russo brings it to you.
Yes. Word for word.
And you go knock it out. But before you do, what's going through your mind? Just personally, here's a guy that you helped bring into the company that, and we've talked about it before, but your dad wasn't necessarily a big proponent of. He was your partner, but he's here. And now he's handing you a sheet of paper that says, after you've been squeezed out, hey, I know you're the big baby face, but tonight you're the heel. And what's unspoken is because Dixie feels like you're the heel. So here's what we're doing.
In the infamous words of Dutch Mantel, run the play. And I knew the audience. If there was one person, I always included Don West in this, really knowing who the TNA fan was, because he sold to them. He knew what they would like, what they would buy, what they wouldn't buy. Don had a real knack for real black ink and red ink. So, but me knowing the product, I'm like, you can say all you want, and I'm going to go run the play, but this don't jive. And as much as Dixie wants this to be a reality, and I'm going to go do this to the best of my ability. There were so many things that I'm like, we are starting off on the wrong foot in so many ways, but it wasn't my place to speak up. again, going back to it's her father's company and they have every right to do whatever in the hell they want to do.
Can I say something that's a little weird? You and I we've veered off a lot, and I know we're going long, and I'm sorry about that, but this is good stuff. Or as Vince would say, this is such good shit.
Pal.
Yeah, pal. When, is this the most powerless you've ever felt in wrestling? Before you answer, I want to add that when you had a contract with WCW, when you were working for Vince McMahon, I mean, Lord knows when you were working for Vince McMahon, you walked out twice.
So that, you know what, Conrad, this is why you are the podfather, but because you phrase and frame the question is non-combative, but a real right to the jugular. And I have to say,
I'm not saying that to be ugly.
Oh, and no, look, I'm saying this look, if people join ad free, they would see the video version of this, and maybe we'll get it on YouTube. I'm saying this like straight up. You said, is this powerless?
Is this the most powerless you felt? Because you were in control of your character.
Yeah.
Even though you're an owner, you're an owner here, but it feels like you have less control here than ever.
And right before we closed the deal, the conversation I had with Janice, Jeff, you are the wrestling guy and we are the finance guy. We're going to make a great team. For whatever reason, that hung with me for a long time. And as the more and more successful we became, and Dean, the CFO, came from Sony, and we brought him on board, and we just referenced the other day, Conrad, me and you, the direct auto and getting sponsorships and Spike and all that. I'll say as the executive producer, but when I changed to talent, but still had this quasi thing out here, but not really an employee anymore. I was a contracted guy till that got back on track. But so, yeah, the answer to your question would be absolutely.
Process what we're saying, guys. When Jeff was quote unquote just one of the boys, he broke in his dad's territory, and he's not the boss, but he can leave if he wants to, and he can go do what he wants. And he's under a microscope and under somebody's thumb. Then he gets going with Vince McMahon, starts going. He's got a little bit of say over what's going on. If he doesn't like it, he can walk out. Hell, he did, not once, but twice. And then he worked with WCW. And then don't forget, before he started TNA, he had the whole WWA thing. And then there was if he ain't doing a job for me, I ain't doing a job for him. You get to sort of do your own. And now you're like, you know what? I'm just going to start my own thing. And now this is that thing. You create a thing that doesn't exist. It's yours. You own it. You're in control. Fast forward a few years and you're in less control of your career than ever before.
By far. And we'll call it not just the little kid in me, but the business mind in me. And with having some successful track record, we got Hulk and Rick. I mean, think about the opportunity that was there.
Not only that, but think about the stupid tax you had paid. And let me qualify that. That is a phrase I use. Okay. Yep. I say stupid tax. So like if I did something dumb, but I learned from it.
Yep.
And then it doesn't happen again and I'm better for it. I would sometimes refer in my real life to say, oh, I paid the stupid tax on that. Meaning, okay, I took a L. I made some mistakes. Some mistakes were made. I lost some money. I made a bad decision, but I've learned from it. And now I can go apply that. There's been trials and tribulations. And people say it's not a loss if you learn from it. And I believe that.
I do too.
You and I have talked a lot about there's been things in our life we've tried that didn't work, but that doesn't mean it wasn't worth a try. Like we had to try to learn. Now you've learned a lot and you're sitting in the back and you can't say or do anything. You can't apply all of the knowledge. Let's not forget before Hulk Hogan was a star and Hulk Hogan's just trying to get paid, brother, he's shooting a vignette in your basement. And Michael St. John is voicing it over and there's all these lights. He stands 6'7". He weighs 300. This is 1979. This is before Vince McMahon owned the WWF. This is before anybody knew what Hulkamania was. He is the Hulk. That happens in your basement, and you have grown up in the business and learned all of this. And yes, you've made mistakes, but that is very valuable in business. You learn what to do, but more importantly, you learn what not to do. And now you're seeing all of these things play out, and it affects your income. And if it goes poorly, you make less money, but you can't say anything.
Well, you say, I can't say anything. I chose to not because.
But again, if you do, they could say, because if you walk out, you're in breach. Cut.
And look, I've shuffled papers with a few billionaires before. That's a lose-lose.
Here's the deal. He who has the most money wins.
Yep.
And in that point, unfortunately, it was not you.
Yep, exactly.
So if you tried to say, but, that's like going bear hunting with a knife.
That's right.
That ain't going your way.
No.
Now you got a puncher's chance, but the odds are good. You're going down. And by the way, you're going down with a wife and 5 kids.
Exactly.
So in an order, because a lot of people are going to say, well, I wouldn't have done that. Bullshit. You got a wife and 5 kids. You ain't there to be champion. You ain't there to go over Hulk Hogan. You're there to bring as much money as you can back to the lake.
That's it. Survive and thrive. At this point, just survive.
Listen, I think as a kid, we all loved eating cereal, but then we become adults and we're like, man, we don't need all that sugar first thing in the morning. But then my wife found Magic Spoon, a nostalgically delicious cereal that tastes just like our childhood favorites, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein. Now, every serving of Magic Spoon cereal has 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs, so you can feel good about what you're eating. The most popular flavors are fruity and cocoa, but there's so many more. But here's a heads up. Here's some big news. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are crispy, crunchy, airy, and an easy way to get 12 grams of protein on the go. For the first time ever, Magic Spoon treats are now available in grocery stores with delicious flavors like marshmallow and chocolatey peanut butter. Now listen, they're all great. I've even rocked a blueberry muffin and I dug it, but my favorite, hands down, and this is a pro tip from old Connie, get the double chocolate. My goodness. You want to talk about the best snack you've ever had. This is so awesome. Jeff even admits that he keeps them in the glove box of his Tahoe. So as he's running around making errands and doing the honey-do list in North Tennessee or Middle Tennessee, he's got a healthy snack. He didn't have to pull over to the gas station and read a bunch of labels. He's not eating junk food. He's eating all that protein, but it tastes so good. Right now, get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/myworld or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/myworld for $5 off. Magic Spoon. Hold on to the dream. But it's unbelievable to think that you know what to do and what not to do. Now, do you know what to do to beat Vince McMahon? No. And by the way, nobody else does either.
They've tried for years.
I want to say that in a loud, clear voice. Nobody else does either because it ain't happened. Now, some people would say, but the ratings, it ain't about that. It's about the cash. And at the end of the day, nobody's made as much money in wrestling as Vince, and nobody ever will. That's the reality.
The latest quarter. Oh my God.
But it's unbelievable how much money they're making.
Yes.
So anyway, the point is you're in the back and there's nothing you can do. Hey, but I was a good guy a week ago. Yeah, not anymore, brother. Dixie wants the new favorite toy to bury you.
Yes.
Okay. That's fine. I got to take some money back to the lake. So let me go ahead and get out of here. I'll hit my shower, get to the Marriott, and we're on our way.
Exactly. Bingo. It's exactly what happened that night.
Samoa Joe and Abyss is up next for a spotlight of 2 bigger men. Of course, Abyss, a homegrown talent. And even though technically Samoa Joe probably cut his teeth and made a big splash in the hardcore wrestling fans' hearts and minds and Ring of Honor, he is effectively a homegrown talent for TNA.
In so many ways.
And they get under 5 minutes.
Go ahead.
They get under 5 minutes. So this is total nonstop action. And we got a guy for 78 seconds trying to climb out of a cage. Now we know we've got a bankable star. Samoa Joe has delivered so many 5-star matches and unbelievable performances, whatever a 5-star match is. And then here's Abyss, who literally is probably more concerned about his performance than anyone in that zip code on that night.
For sure.
I'm not saying that to be funny. That's real. He cares.
That's accurate. He cares.
And if you went to the real life abyss and said, we'd like to throw you off the building through a flaming bus covered in thumbtacks, he would say, what segment? And this happens in under 5 minutes. And this, in theory, is the end of the biggest audience for TNA ever. You know, 5 minutes in and out. There's not much in video packages. There's no real introduction of some talent like Beer Money. Now that you've got all these eyes, you would think, man, we need to be selling to this new audience. Who is AJ Styles? Who is Samoa Joe? Who is Beer Money? Instead, Bubba the Love Sponge sneaks the fucking Nasty Boys in.
God, relax, dude.
And then Jeff Hardy and Shannon Moore are leaving, and they're mobbed by fans, and Jeff gives a painting away. Mobbed is probably the wrong world. It's 3 girls. And it's the last time we see Jeff until March 8th. So now we're back in the program, and I know what you're thinking. Well, we're going to have a barn burner of a match. No, we're going to have the Nasty Boys doing a food fight in the back, throwing donuts and catering. But now we're finally here. And Styles is going to pin Angle with a springboard shooting star press in 22 minutes and 5 seconds to keep the title. The match is a good match, but as Meltzer would say, the match was hurt by having Flair come out, taking the crowd's attention from the ring, as well as diverting the TV audience from caring about the match. There were also commercial breaks, which hurt it. The late break coming as they're trading near falls was possibly the worst time commercial break in a big match in years. Now, again, somebody sitting in the back who understands that, hey, if you got a big marquee thing like that, you're going to try to front load your breaks. So you make sure late in the show, when you really want to close strong for your main event, you don't want any channel flipping, you don't want to lose any momentum about whatever they've counter programmed you on the other show with, you don't give them a reason to leave. You would front load some of those commercials as best you could. And you would try to go into them and come out of them hot and make sure there's no channel changing. But we can't right now, when we're in the nitty gritty of a match and we think it's about to end, go to a Pantene commercial. But also too, we probably wouldn't have had Ric Flair strut ass out there. It's the first time we've seen him. We want to know what he's going to do. And in theory, okay, well, he's here to observe the world title match. But really, that's how he debuts. That's like week 5 stuff. That ain't week. Let him come out and be Ric Flair and cut a promo. That's what Ric Flair's here to do. Talk. Are you paying Ric Flair to sit in the crowd? Or are you paying him to talk? And somebody in the back's probably thinking that if they weren't already packing their bag and headed to the Marriott.
Preach.
It's unbelievable.
Yes, it is. In a lot of ways. Yes, in so many ways. And as you see the times of matches and everything, you can tell it's playing catch up all night. And that's the nature of the beast. We're going to cram 50 new talents in here and 4 premieres and this and that. And in
the Army, they call it 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag.
Correct, sir.
Then that mystery guy, remember him? It's Tyson Tomko. I mean, because of course we don't have any new debuts, or, I mean, why wouldn't it be? From the Observer, the show ended with Foley trying to find Hogan, but instead ending up in his old office that looks a lot nicer, but it's now Bischoff's office. Bischoff told him that he's got no power in the company, and if he wants to stay, he's going to have to be a wrestler along with Bischoff. Foley was probably the best performer on the show and said he had come to grips about working for Hogan, but that years ago he vowed he would never work for Bischoff again. He then teased attacking Bischoff, noting that if he was going to be fired, at least he'd get something out of it. But Hall, Nash, and Waltman all attack Foley as Hogan then walks in the door. Hogan, dressed in the Hollywood Hogan look, used a badly done knockoff of Voodoo Child as his theme music, as opposed to Real American, walked in, but you don't know if he's happy they beat up Foley or mad. So we're back to having the NWO. And now, instead of not being sure where Sting stands, we're not sure where Hulk stands. And by the way, the show did achieve a record for TNA in terms of ratings. It did a 1.45 rating and 2.2 million viewers. Well, how did that stack up? The 2 hours of Raw did 5.5 million viewers. It's still a success, I guess, because you had 2.2 million. But as I've learned that some of the guys in creative, sometimes if you go to a wrestler and he's not on the A side, he's not going to get his hand raised. sometimes those guys would say, and then what? Or where do we go from there? And my question to you was, as you're got your little wheelie bag leaving the building, what were you thinking was next after this?
Oh, another episode. All the premieres, and it's like they tried to tell so many stories at once, and Nasty Boys. It was a completely new roster. And of course my phone is blowing up, and the sidebars, and, hey, what's going on? And is everything going to be okay? And, you know, in my mind, and you've very clearly stated it, I'm thinking to myself, selfishly, dude, no disrespect. I'm worrying about myself right now, because it's a whole new playing field.
But Pete, but listen, let's contextualize that.
Nobody knew that.
No, not just that. You have been the leader of this company.
Yes.
Forever. And everyone knows that. And so when something goes wrong and something's different, something's changing, maybe it's not even wrong. It's just change. You know, there's an old saying that I like to use around the office. Nobody likes change. Everybody likes improvement. Well, this is a change, and I'll be damned. It don't feel like an improvement to most of the guys sitting in the back. So now they're looking for leadership. They're looking for answers. Do they go ask Eric Bischoff, who they just met earlier in the day? Do they go ask the guy they idolized and grew up watching? Or do they go ask the guy who helped them get their big break and the biggest contract to make the most money they've ever made in wrestling? And he has to go, And
we will get into this in future episodes. And that mutual friend that we love has got some great experience on this. Because, and look, the TNA attorney, LA based attorney, I asked him, how do you want me to position it? And he clearly stated, just tell them to go to Dixie. And I said, yes, sir. That's exactly what I'll do. So that's what would happen, is that folks would go to Dixie. You're asking that the real reality here is, and then it was, I mean, just again, I'm not raining on it, but Dixie would say, go ask Hulk, go ask Eric, go ask Bruce, go ask Vince, because
the reality was, and you know, I've never had a long-term conversation with Dixie. I met Dixie twice in passing. We've spoke 8 minutes total probably, but I assume, and this happens in a lot of partnerships, somebody starts thinking they got the bad deal. And all bad deals come to an end. And I bet from her perspective, wait a minute, it's my family's money that brought all these people in.
Yeah.
My family's money that did all this production. We've gone and we've hired Keith Mitchell. We've got the guy who ran Nitro. We've got the biggest stars in wrestling. How hard can it really be? Like, we can do what Jeff's doing. We don't have, just tell Jeff to go home. She had no idea. And I think until you started giving that guidance of, I don't know, go ask Dixie, that would have been the only way she would have known how many little fires you put out through the course of a day or a week or a month. But she was staying in her lane doing Dixie stuff. But now all of a sudden, wait a minute, Jeff did all this. That had to be a sobering reality for her.
Tough. That's what I'm saying. Compassion. I had conversations with her mother as well. Like, I'm just telling you, how can I help? Now this goes over the 10, 11, 12, 13, but I'm like, this ain't easy. You've got some serious personalities surrounding your daughter. Now I'm getting sidebarred here, but you look, at the end of the day, we got to make money.
Yeah.
And I joked a little while ago, think about the P&L of this episode, because Dean Broadhead looked at it on a, you know, he would break it down onto week to week, but it's also the simple terms were that monthly accounting. Oh my God, it radically changed in January 2010. And that's front and center on her plate, literally front and center.
By the way, let's not forget, if you were watching Monday Night Raw in the lead up to this, you saw commercials promoting this show. No matter how many times you say it on commentary, or you run a little graphic at the bottom, people are creatures of habit. There is no Monday night show the next week. You've promoted now on UFC, the biggest show that they have, The Ultimate Fighter, because more people watch that show than they do the pay-per-views. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yep.
It is a primetime major special to have an opportunity for your programming to be on their program. Cause it got me as a lapsed fan. Oh, Hulk Hogan, I got to go watch that.
Yep.
And now we're running ads on all these major markets. Don't forget Monday, blah, blah, blah. Hulk Hogan. Yeah. I tune in the next Monday. Not there.
Nope.
The next time the show would air on a Monday is March 8th. This was January. This is the first Monday of January.
Yep.
And it will be the second Monday of March before we do it again. And we've spent a whole bunch of cash that we'll never get back. And we've spent a whole bunch of opportunity for a first impression with a bunch of fans that we'll never get back. It is a college course of what not to do in professional wrestling.
College?
Today was a college course of what not to do.
I'd say a step up, maybe it's mesmerizing in a lot of ways. And again, I go back to my 2013 year, and I'm not saying talking about January 4th episode, but just the progression of, oh, wait a minute. Now, why did our January expenses go so high?
Right.
I don't know Hulk's deal. What? Oh, wait, you had this guy and that guy and that. Oh, wait. And Flair's contract started then. Oh, wait. Hardy started in February or March, whatever it is. When you start seeing the progression of the expenses, January 2010 was monumental in so many ways, and none of them good.
Sum up in a sentence how you run a successful business, Jeff.
Black ink over red ink.
What he said in layman's speak is spend less than you make.
There you go.
And everyone listening to this does this. You know, I'm not saying that anyone can be a business owner or that it's for everyone, because there's a lot of mental stuff that you go through. Just imagine what we just ran through with Jeff. But again, if you're listening to this, and maybe you got to be a little older to even get this, if you can balance a checkbook, you can run a small business. It's just important to remember, spend less than you make. And we blew that out of the water. And sometimes you take a flyer on things and you try to do a lost leader. Like you see a bar in your neighborhood, maybe, and they say, we're going to do penny beer tonight.
There you go.
And some people would say, well, they're not making money on penny beer. How can they do that? Because your ass is going to get tipsy and get them $13 nachos too. And you might even say, well, these penny beers are in tiny glasses. I don't like these little glasses. I want a bottle. I'm going to pay full price for the bottle. Or that penny beer ain't my brand, but I'm here anyway. And I kind of want to watch the game. So let me go ahead and get my regular import beer. And hey, you know what? I think I want to do a shot of vodka too. I'm spending other money. You got me in the door with a little promotion. But in this case, we got him in the door with a little promotion. And then we said, see you in 9 weeks or whatever. What? That will not work.
That's where the lost leader mentality did not exist. I like any stretch of the imagination, but it was, I think, to defend that regime, everybody was laser focused on January the 4th and not even January 11, 12, 14th or whatever that following Thursday was. They were literally on the 4th, but that's like Memphis Wrestling 101. No, guys, that's the very start. It was.
And here's the thing too. I want to mention, this is unfortunate, but I just want to remind everybody, Eric Bischoff ran a wrestling company for a television station, a television network. So all Eric had to be concerned with was ratings. It's their job to sell the ads. It's their job to market it on their other properties. It's his job to get the ratings. Your dad's job in Memphis was to turn a profit. Those are two different animals.
Completely.
And I'm sure a guy like Eric Bischoff, who's worked in Hollywood and ran WCW, which, by the way, at its height, WCW Nitro was the most watched wrestling show and the most watched show on cable.
Yes.
So Eric Bischoff rightfully puffs his chest out because he is a television executive that went to the very top of the mountain. So I'm not disparaging Eric, but I am saying it's a different thing.
Yeah.
And so he looks at the thing like Memphis and thinks, oh, well, that's small potatoes. That's just that wrestling shit. They were there to sell $10 tickets and $3 hot dogs. I'm here to sell to M&M Mars. It's a different thing. TNA was more Memphis than it was WCW. And the only person who knew it was in the back shaking his head and can't say shit.
Oh, there are a few others.
There's only one owner who was thinking that.
Yes, sir. Well said there.
Now, I'm not saying that Dutch Mantell all of a sudden forgot how wrestling used to be profitable.
Yeah.
But as far as a person who should have, because I think everyone listening to this is probably thinking, but Jeff, you were an owner. But to your point, minority owner, AKA an employee with a bonus.
There you go.
Is that not what it is?
Oh man, never phrased it that way, but that's exactly what it is.
That's an employee. You do what you're told. And if we do well, which is not up to you, by the way, you'll get a bonus.
Yep. It ultimately does not rest on your shoulders. No.
I cannot wait to talk more about this, but that's going to be the end of this week's episode. Next week, we're going to talk about simpler, happier times. No Surrender 2006, which went down September 24th at the Impact Zone in Orlando. On top is Samoa Joe and Jeff Jarrett and a fans revenge lumberjack match.
Oh, I can't wait to tell you who some of those lumberjacks were.
That right there is RASSLIN. That's wrestling. And we'll talk about that next week. Of course, we got an Ultimate X match where we've got AJ and Christopher Daniels taking on LAX. At the time, that was Hernandez and Homicide. A singles match with Rhino and Christian Cage. Senshi and Chris Sabin will be in there for the X Division Championship. The Naturals, how about that? Are going to be a part of a triple chance battle royal to determine a number one contendership for the NWA World Tag Team titles. We've got Abyss working with Raven and Brother Runt. Jay Lethal will be in there with Petey Williams, and Eric Young will be in the ring with A1. Next week, we're going to talk about No Surrender 2006, but I got to tell you, I think I'm most looking forward to this fans revenge lumberjack match discussion. You're signing up for some pain.
I love it. And this is something I enjoyed. When we get into who the lumberjacks are, it is I think you'll crack up at a couple of them. You'll chuckle, but then you'll go, huh? Really? And maybe we can do a little bit of a watch along on a couple of them. It'll be fun. But Conrad, before we go, I don't know if you're wrapping up. I do want to say about January 4th and 2010, and we covered a lot of ground and a lot of topics to come. Gosh, we got some sound bites to tease future podcasts. But all the screw ups I've done, all the screw ups I've been a part of, everything that I witnessed, specifically, we're talking about this. I can say that what you said earlier about how much I learned.
Yeah.
And communication is at the very top of that, but also, look, hindsight's 20. Had I had it to do over again, I probably would have been, and I learned this in 2010, a little bit more diplomatically, politely aggressive, if that makes sense, to say, hey guys, I kept my mouth completely shut. Maybe I could have diplomatically said, hey guys, y'all want to think about this, or can we discuss this? And if you don't want to talk about it, that's up to you. But can we talk about it? But I don't know. But man, it was a lot of opportunity missed. I'll say that.
Jim Ross said famously once, the way to communicate with Vince McMahon, if you're a talent, is to converse, but don't confront.
Ooh.
Converse, but don't confront. And Bruce Pritchard says that Pat Patterson taught him how to quote unquote speak Vince when he was cutting his teeth with Vince. He was people forget Bruce was in his early 20s when he used to work for Vince. And when you're in your early 20s, you fucking know everything. So he would hear an idea or a concept or what have you, and he would say, "Oh, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I would never do that. That'll never work. You should do this." And now it becomes me versus you. And now instead of may the best idea win, it's I ain't going to let this guy have a better idea than me. We're doing my idea. Now it's me versus you, not us on the same team, which is where we started and where we should finish. So he says, Pat taught him, you don't do that with Vince. You say instead, what if? So now instead of trying to force your idea on Vince, you're trying to make Vince's idea better. My dad taught me that as a kid, and he said, that's the key to sales. If you want somebody to do something, you got to make it their idea.
Yep.
An example would be, hey, Jeff, I got 3 stories worth of house this weekend and I'm trying to move, and you got that new pickup truck. Why don't you come on by and help me move this weekend? That's not a good pitch. Years ago, I would say, Jeff, the Dr. Pepper Corporation is dropping off. But I got to get all my stuff moved there in time. You know anybody who might be able to help me out? And Jeff would say, Conrad, I got a truck. I could help. Ta-da.
If I would have pulled Eric aside, we could go through so many difference, but this was I'll say enjoyable.
And here's why you didn't, Jeff. You didn't do that because you felt like I'm the damn owner. I ain't got to talk to Eric Bischoff.
I don't know.
I have ran this thing flawlessly. And by the way, some people would say, again, Eric Bischoff probably came in, saw where the ratings were, saw where the pay-per-view buy rates were, remembered the heights of WCW and said, oh, this is small potatoes. What Eric didn't have to concern himself with in WCW or TNA was, hey, what was the bottom line?
Yeah.
You were making a whole bunch of money. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah. Let's do more of what works. Let's do less of what doesn't work.
Yes.
But we can't tell what works or doesn't work if everything's all new. Let's keep our same show and add a little bit of spice. And then we'll do it a little later and a little later. And then eventually we keep getting rid of the bottom 20%. We're going to have all hitters. We're going to have a World Series team. But if we just say the old team sucks, let's get a new bunch of guys in here. We're starting all over again.
Oh, Connie, what an episode.
It's a phenomenal conversation. I appreciate your candor. I'm sure there's a few people who are going to blow your phone up and a few people who are going to probably block your phone number. But if you'd like to throw me a block, I'm at Hey, it's Conrad on Twitter, and he is at Real Jeff Jarrett. And by the way, I want to mention, I know we went long today. Jeff, we went long, right?
Yeah. All games missed. No, go ahead.
I didn't mean to go long, but it was, as our friend would say, such good shit.
There you go.
I want to encourage you to let the wrestling fan in your life know about the My World with Jeff Jarrett YouTube page. It's the best possible way to introduce wrestling fans to this show, because when they see a runtime of over 3 hours, they're going to be intimidated and say, ain't nobody got time for that. And I get that, but we're going to have clips of this show up over on YouTube. Send it to a fan of the old NWO. Send it to a fan of the old TNA. Send it to somebody who hates Jeff Jarrett and let them try just a little sample. Think of it like when you were going down the Sam's Club or the Costco in the frozen aisle, and there's that lady with a hairnet with a little plate full of toothpicks and there's meat on the end. Try this. Just have a little sample size over at our YouTube. I think that's good advice. Don't you, Jeff?
I absolutely do. Well said. The old lady with the hairnet at Costco, and man, they've got some delicious barbecue shrimp.
The idea is, as you scroll through that Costco, the last thing you were thinking of buying is whatever that lady's selling. You didn't come here for that. You came here for 48 rolls of toilet paper because you got 5 kids and they can shit all day. So let's get these toilet papers and let's get out of here. But I am a little hungry and I see that toothpick, so I'm going to go hit Meemaw up and get that going. Damn, that's pretty good. I might get that. I think Karen will like that. And ta-da, you bought some shit. So we hope that you'll do that for us. Refer them to our YouTube, hit the subscribe button. We'd greatly appreciate it. Jeff, thank you for the opportunity to catch up today. This was fun, man.
A lot of fun, brother. The episodes keep rolling and different topics. And yeah, we're going to do this again soon, as far as letting the My World Pod listeners, give them the keys and let them pick the topic.
Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. They picked
No
this.
kidding. No kidding.
I was thinking we would wait and do this on an anniversary, but I'm glad we did it today because I'm all lathered up and I'm ready to go watch some football now. So until next time, he is at Real Jeff Jarrett. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. We are at My World Pod on Twitter, and we'll see you next week when we talk about all things TNA from 2006 on My World. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today. And hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.